which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has anyone signed up for the Citizens Forum?
Yes, Jennifer Hole is here.
Hi, if you please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Hole. I reside at 60 Belmont Drive in Portsmouth. I'm here as a representative. I'm the president of the Teachers Association of Newport. First, I want to thank you all for allowing me to make this very brief comment. 21 years ago, I was hired to be a third grade teacher in the Newport Public Schools. The saying goes that if we get into this profession, we don't get into it for the income. We definitely do not get into it for the income, but we get into it for the outcome. And the outcome is our students. It's the children of Newport. That's why we do what we do every day for our kids, for your kids. Newport teachers are out in front of City Hall today because we wanted to let you, the City Council, know how much we appreciate your support. When I look up there, I see very specific. I see every one of you has supported us in some way, shape, or form over the 21 years that I've been involved in Newport Public Schools, and it is extremely appreciated. But I also want to let the public at large know how much we appreciate their support as well. It truly does take a village. However, the superintendent in Newport and other members of her district administration team are actively violating our current collective bargaining agreement. These violations have had a very negative impact on many teachers, and therefore it's going to have a negative impact on the students. Rather than come together and actually try to solve and resolve these differences, the superintendent unilaterally moved many teachers to positions that they did not seek simply because she wanted to. She'll say, oh, it's best for the kids. And we tell you now, it is not best for the kids. We have told it to her. We have told it to every member of the school committee, and nobody is listening to us. We are the ones who are boots on the ground in those classrooms every day with the children that we love. And the people who are decision makers are not listening to us. So I am here begging for help from you, from the public, from anybody who will talk to the superintendent, who will talk to the school committee and tell them to end this nonsense and follow our contract. Right now, what the superintendent is doing and her director of multi-language learners, Ronnie Lee Mooney, they are setting the children of Newport and the teachers of Newport and the families of Newport for absolute failure. Absolute failure. She has stripped every intervention at the elementary school. She has taken away all the reading teachers. She's taken away all but 2 math interventionists. She's taken away the behavior specialist.
Just a couple more comments.
Okay. She's taken away all those things, and she's done the same thing at Thompson Middle School. And she's telling the public that it's fine. The experts are back in the classroom. Yes, with all the other kids, one person cannot handle the academic, the behavioral, the social, emotional needs of the children in this city, and they deserve better. So I am here and I am begging on behalf of myself and all the other teachers in the Teachers Association.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Just a couple of notes. I'm going to make a motion that we move the Stone Pier resolution to after the public hearing, right before the consent calendar. And also just a note on the Dixon Street, we are going to continue that for 2 weeks. And so just so you don't have to stick around to hear us go on and on.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
On your first motion, I will second it, moving the Stone Pier up
Okay.
to right after item number 1, the public hearing.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And so we are going to continue that tonight. And I just, so if you want to stay, you're more than welcome. But if you want to come back in 2 weeks, that would be great. So thank you. Okay, the public hearing is proposed amendments to the comprehensive land use plan housing chapter, recommendations from the planning board, proposed housing chapter amendments, and ordinance amending chapter 14.04.010 entitled Comprehensive Planning and Land Use Act, and this is a first reading. Is anyone from the public? Oh, hello.
Hello, I thought I would start with a brief presentation if that's all right with
Sure.
council. So for the record, my name is Trish Reynolds. I'm the city's planning director. I'm here tonight with 3 members of our consulting team, Libra Planners. They're sitting at the table here, Peter Friedrichs, Steve Irvine, and Kim Salerno. We're here before the council tonight for consideration of a comprehensive plan amendment, specifically to incorporate an updated housing chapter, which would supersede the existing chapter, which is outdated. In addition to the chapter itself, a few adjustments were necessary in other chapters of the plan for overall accuracy and consistency. All of this material is available on the city's website, and a hard copy has been provided to the council as well. This updated housing chapter is the result of community input and a lot of hard work. Working with Libra, our consulting team, with funding provided by Rhode Island Housing, we began by conducting a survey. Then a public meeting was held where more comments were gathered. A combined council planning board workshop was convened to review the progress and introduce the build-out study. A public hearing was held by the planning board where the board reviewed the chapter and provided the favorable recommendation in your package. And this was all leading up to tonight's public hearing where the chapter is being reviewed by the council and hopefully approved for incorporation into the comprehensive plan. Slide 2, please, Zach. So at the beginning, I want to just start out by talking a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is and why it's really important. So a comprehensive plan is a collective vision of how a community moves into the future. And the plan establishes goals, policies, and actions to accomplish that vision. By state law, each municipality is required to have a comp plan in place, and every comp plan is required to address certain topics like land use, transportation, and housing. Each topic has been assigned its own chapter. Comp plans can be amended up to 4 times per year, which allows municipalities to make changes as conditions may change over the 10-year lifespan of the plan. So every plan lasts for 10 years, and we're able to update that as necessary. And that's the process that we're looking to go through tonight. A comp plan also relates to zoning. State law requires that a city's zoning ordinance be consistent with the comp plan's vision and goals. So it's very important that we have this plan in place that talks about and looks at how we want to move forward, and then that can be reflected in our zoning, which is actually how we make it happen. So why is it necessary to amend the housing chapter of the city's comp plan now? The existing housing chapter doesn't address current housing conditions or needs. Since the plan's adoption in 2017, there have been dramatic changes in housing availability and affordability. So as the city contemplates updating our zoning to address housing issues, this needs to be supported by our comp plan. The city's population did not decrease as it was expected when the comp plan was drafted, but it actually increased according to the recent census data. And the expectation is that the city's population will continue to grow in the next decades. For this and other reasons, housing availability in Newport is not meeting demand. This is not a problem unique to Newport, but the impacts that are felt across the region are particularly acute here. The City Council has specifically called out housing that is available and affordable as a priority issue. The existing housing chapter doesn't consider how much new housing is needed or where or how it could be constructed. The proposed housing chapter includes housing goals and policies that not only support the broad goals of the existing comp plan and the North End Urban Plan, but it also lays out a framework for housing creation and retention. It supports Newport housing development in a way that protects and enhances the city's physical and natural assets. Slide 3, please. The proposed housing chapter follows guidelines provided by the state and includes the sections you see listed here. It begins with an overview of the housing conditions, complete with key definitions. There's a description of Newport's population and how it's predicted to change over time. Also included are related policy considerations and how we move forward with a plan for action and an implementation program. Slide 4, please. So in this process, some things that we've learned. One is, as I previously mentioned, the city's population is growing and it's projected to continue to grow over the next decades. 2, that for a variety of reasons, the number of available housing units is decreasing. Sale inventory is low, apartment inventory is extremely low, and this is all reflected by a rapid increase in house prices and rents. And we know that there is an acute shortage of housing for middle-income residents. 5, please. Some of the things considered in drafting the chapter. 1, obviously the need for more housing, and specifically workforce housing. 2, the need for both creating new housing and keeping the existing housing stock available for housing use. 3, the importance of protecting the city's affordable housing neighborhoods and the need to maintain a good percentage of affordable units. 4, supporting additional institutional housing, and by institutional, I mean for salve kids, for hospital workers, for Navy families. Units that are currently rented by students or other temporary residents will be freed for other uses. And 5, and I think this is a really important item, is the positive role of home ownership and the importance of having a community with families. 6, please. So, community input, the data collected in the build-out study, which you looked at during the workshop, and the need for housing leads to a plan for action. So Newport is a city that's built on small lots and compact neighborhoods, and it's one of the things that makes us amazing. We can look to build on that pattern of development through revisions to our zoning code. We can allow more 2- and 3-family homes, a typology that's common in Newport and will be compatible with the existing housing stock. So it won't change really the character of our city. And specific commercial areas of the city were identified for increased development, like the Gateway Center and the North End's Urban Village. The housing chapter calls for each and all of these strategies to be used together and in a considered manner that respects the city's character and natural resources. 7. This section contains the goals, policies, and actions to provide guidance as the city moves forward. And slide 8. The implementation program assigns specific actions related to the goals and helps to keep the plan on course. Both the goals and policies and the implementation program are required by state statute. Included in the plan are also 2 appendices. One is Appendix A, which goes into detail about each neighborhood's specific character and gives us some more guidance about how we could add houses in each specific context. And the last one is a copy of the build-out study, which I think is a really valuable tool for us to use. One of the calls for the plan is to be updated with recent data and respond to that as the plan evolves, which is something that we do with our comp plans anyway. So to summarize, the incorporation of this new housing chapter into the city's comprehensive plan is intended to enable the city to move forward with measured zoning changes and policies to best address the city's current housing needs. I'm here along with the consultants to answer any specific questions you have about this, and I hope you've all had a chance to read it. I think it's a really interesting read with a lot of good ideas.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any comment from the public?
Ms. Chair.
Any comment from the
Madam Chair.
council?
Madam Chair, yes. Thank you so much to Libra, to our Libra consultants, as well as our administration for the city for tackling on housing. I really appreciated doing some of the read. I do have a couple of questions. However, so like understanding that the comp plan is like halfway through its life expectancy before we have to actually do another comp plan. what is the timeline? Are these achievable goals that will happen within the next 5 years?
So the comp plan was approved in 2017, so we're shockingly actually close to 2027. It'll take a while to prepare it, so we're going to start probably a year and a half ahead of that, working on the new updated plan. So we will have a very good, so there's 13 chapters in our comp plan, 12 of those are required by state law. We will have a really good foundation for the housing chapter. We'll be able to check in at that time, see if it needs any adjustments. But I would think that this is something that will still be relevant at that time, that it'll still be in effect, and that we'll be able to adjust as necessary with that comprehensive plan in 2027.
And how many houses are we hoping to sort as a direct result of this plan? How much housing are we talking?
So we looked at a planning horizon of 30 years, and we looked at the projected growth that we were going to have. That, based on economic information, we projected that in that course of time, we need to have an additional 1,500 approximately units. So when you divide that out, and I know it's not an equal thing, and we don't need them in exact patches, but it comes to about 50 a year over that time, which I think is a really achievable goal for us. Right now, we have in the queue more than that. So I think that that number is something that really is attainable. And I think it gives us something to strive for. And it's something that addresses our growing population.
Okay. And then, so I noticed that in this housing building analysis, it seemed like most of the development would happen in the north end and as far as Gateway. And I'm sort of questioning, why are we just sectioning it off to the north end and just as far as Gateway?
So a couple of things. We have all these different tools that we're going to look at. We're going to employ all of them. One of them is that we looked at large commercial lots that were underutilized. And it so happens that we have that sort of characteristic in the north end. So that qualifies. The Gateway Center also qualifies. We also looked at sort of a comprehensive look at our city and the things that are really important. And one of the things that we value is our natural resources. And so to limit impact on natural resources, which a lot of those occur along Ocean Drive in that area, we limited some of that development to other areas where we already have an urban development pattern.
But
Sure.
Peter Friedrichs, Libra Planners. Trish hasn't had the benefit of seeing the draft zoning yet, which I've been working on, and we're hoping to have to you next month. And this is a hot button issue that there's been a lot of talk about and will continue to be talked about. I think from a zoning perspective, we're trying to be uniform. I think that the draft that will be delivered to you next month will be uniform. So we're taking that comment to heart. And as Director Reynolds mentioned, there's the natural resources issues. The transportation in southern Newport is also an issue. Traffic this time of year, getting down there is quite difficult. And also it's more exposed to extreme weather out there. So these are all considerations that we're taking into account. And my hope is that the zoning that we present will be in the middle ground. That is something that all councilors can support.
okay, just one more, sorry. How does this weigh in terms of equity? Okay, so like, what I'm concerned about is when you're consistently building more affordable housing in the same area, it actually doesn't perpetuate more resilience. It's actually keeping poverty within the boundaries, and like we're continuing the redlining aspect of things and continuing in terms of like not actually putting people out of poverty, just further concentrating them in the same area. And I'm very concerned about that.
But are we talking about subsidized housing? Are we talking about middle income housing? Or, I mean, affordable housing, subsidized housing, the nomenclature is very confusing. So when we talk about this type of housing, what are we talking about?
We're talking about workforce housing, which is the issue that came up in foundational to the plan.
And
We know that we have a There's an appraiser who testifies at the planning board and zoning board very often, and his contention is that every housing unit helps,
Mhm.
regardless of whether it's middle housing, affordable housing, or high-end housing.
Mhm.
The actual addition of housing units is going to help the overall stock. We've identified a need for workforce, middle family, middle income housing, and that's what we're going to be trying to target with this, smaller units, things that are in the urban core. And a lot of this is not really focused on the north end. Those goals haven't changed much from the North End Urban Plan, where we want to have a combination of mixed use, open space, and resources for North End residents.
But as you know, workforce housing, $2,000 to $3,000 is the definition of workforce housing. And we're having lots of complaints from locals that are just saying that it's just not affordable to do that. Why would we continue to build more housing or apartments that residents, locals can't afford?
Yep.
To your point, Counselor, so affordable housing absolutely is part of this plan. We want to make sure that the percent of the year-round units in the city that are restricted affordable stays above the state's goal, which is 10%. And that will require additional affordable housing construction as Newport adds units. There's also explicit language in this amendment to support the community development corporations like Church Community Housing. And to your point about affordability, in that draft zoning are the types of price points that you're talking about. So we're aiming to get at actual true affordability closer to the $1,000 a month price.
Councilor Lima?
And so, sorry, and I promise I'll get.
No, I don't mind. I want to ask a question about your very good last question to what the gentleman just brought up, but I will yield until you let me.
Oh, okay, thank you. Now I forgot, never mind. Well, actually, no, I just wanted to say thank you for answering that question, because I do believe also too, high-rise apartments aren't gonna save us alone. We do need more diversity so I love the concept and the goals of being able to create more of a diversified housing stock. So a combination of home ownership, rentals, et cetera. So thank you for that question.
I just,
Let me answer.
just to, Counselor Lima's point, though, what we don't have is the type of housing that someone would go to once they fall off that cliff effect. So, at what point is the AMI, would the AMI be in order to be able to protect those people? Like,
Yeah, so one of the things is that the price point or the income at which you qualify for assisted housing is higher for home buying than for rental.
Mhm.
So it's 80% of AMI for rental and 120% of AMI for purchase. So we're trying to latch on to the purchase opportunities as an opportunity for people that price out of the 80% AMI. I don't know if we have the figures for Newport County handy on AMI. It's by your household size. So I
Right.
think it goes from like 40,000 up to 100,000, depending on how big your household is.
Yeah, because that's a concern of mine. It's like someone's child gets a job right out of high school. They're living together. They get a raise. And then suddenly they're out of their subsidized housing, and then there's nowhere else to
And
go.
when you're a home buyer, you only have to qualify once. You qualify when you make that purchase, and if you're above income later, you still get to keep your house. When you're in rental, you can lose your housing.
Right.
There's a lot of benefits to home ownership, affordable housing.
Thank you, Council Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilor Lima. I have a number of items I'd like to talk to and a number of questions I'd like to ask. I'm going to make it short. But for now, I won't ask those questions and I won't make those comments. I just want to comment and ask a question on one very specific item you referenced about 2 minutes ago. You talked about the state requirements, the state law regarding a minimum percentage that municipalities must offer for affordable housing. The definition of affordable housing, the definition of workforce housing, the definition of low-income housing, and just about every definition regarding housing has been quite fluid in the last 8 years. It's changed frequently. I'm familiar with what you referenced regarding the state law and the requirements imposed upon the municipalities. I believe the law was first enacted in 2006 by the General Assembly, the Rhode Island General Assembly. Can you please tell us by that law regarding the 10% requirement, what is the city of Newport's percentage now as it relates to that state law? And then as you answer that, a follow-up, what is the town of Middletown and what is the town of Portsmouth? You give me a smirk, which is great because I smirk right back at you with some type of finger pointing to our great friends in Middletown and Portsmouth. Can you answer the questions, please?
I will try to answer the questions for Middletown and Portsmouth. I'm reviewing what I believe is the most recent data from Rhode Island Housing that keeps track of this. It's from 2022. In that data, Newport has 16% deed-restricted affordable housing. Portsmouth and Middletown, I think Middletown had gone up and down over the years as some of the housing went offline, Navy housing. My guess is that right now they're maybe at 8%.
No.
I think your guess is wrong.
Okay. And Portsmouth, I know
With great respect.
Portsmouth is lower. The number that comes to mind for me is, I was thinking 6, but maybe it's 3%. I don't.
Can you share with the council, not that it's on Aquidneck Island, but can you share with the council what Barrington's percentage is compared to the state law? And can you share with us what Block Islands is? A community much like us, but we are far greater in terms of geographic area and total population. And can you share with us what East Greenwich percentages are, please?
So Newport has the highest in the state currently, 2022. There were some units off of 3rd Street that went offline maybe 6 years ago, and that dipped us below Woonsocket for a bit, but now we're up at the highest. In the state, there's only, I believe, 4 municipalities currently that meet the requirement. Exeter, East Providence, and New Shoreham are very close to that 10%. Year over year, they've dipped above it and below it. I don't know if you remember, Kim, from our meetings in Barrington, but I think Barrington's at 2.5%. And East.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I will. I think, again, that guess is wrong. You're on the high side by about 2.5%.
So
All right, so is there any other discussion on the council?
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to hold my questions and comments, but I will yield to my colleagues if they have other questions.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, Councilor Romley.
First, a process-related question. We're not voting on approving this tonight. We are just accepting this to be heard,
Well,
right?
we're-
And
we're-
this enables us to then vote on accepting this as a change to the comprehensive land use plan in 2 weeks.
It's actually as part of an ordinance. So you first pass it on the ordinance, which amends the comp plan to incorporate this chapter.
That's right.
But we are
That-
not
That is a
voting.
vote that we're going to vote on tonight. It's just this 14.04.010 entitled Comprehensive Land Planning Land Use Act. So it's just this one little. Yeah.
But we're not voting this ordinance into effect tonight. This is just the first hearing of it, correct?
Right, this is the first hearing of the ordinance.
Yes.
So we're not voting on this tonight.
You
No,
should be
we
voting on
are.
the first passage.
We're
yes.
voting on first
First
passage.
passage.
That's what.
Uh,
first-
I have a tremendous number of questions on this document. This document's a very important document. And thank you for putting together something as detailed and as researched as this document. For me personally, there's a lot of things in here I want to understand more. There's a lot of questions I have. I want to understand the basis of some of the things in here. And I'm a bit reluctant to do that live during city council because I think that's an exercise that is many, many, many minutes, perhaps hours. And I might suggest, is this appropriate for us to have a workshop at some point so that we can have extended Q&A and go through this document in detail versus just look at it and ask a few questions today? So I'm going to make a motion that we hold an open workshop on this so that we can have an extended Q&A with the city planning department and the consultants, just so that all of us comprehensively understand what's in here. And if we have any objections or changes or requests for more information, that we have that opportunity. I don't feel that this council meeting that we've really allocated enough time. For me personally, I don't want to speak for the other counselors.
Is there a time frame on this?
Um, There is a time frame in that we would like to move forward with the zoning that will be based on this. And we have consultants that are funded through the state that are on a timeline for their grant. So we could lose some funding for the rest of the project.
But if this is just the first reading, if we approve this on first reading, and then is it possible to have a workshop in the next 2 weeks and then look at the second reading?
Madam Chair, might I?
Yeah.
I agree with Councilor Romley completely. This is far too big an issue for us to deal with this evening, especially when we have many other weighted items on the agenda tonight. This is something that we should, as Councilor Romley suggests, have a public forum on. Why would we want to vote, with great respect, Madam Chair, why would we want to vote yes on this tonight simply to move it to the next meeting? Voting yes gives our residents the impression that we support the motion before us. I don't support it. I think we need, as Councilor Romley said, extensive research. And this, by the way, for anybody who does not know, and I think we all know, this is an example of the state of Rhode Island being a bully. The state of Rhode Island comes in and tells us, who has a charter going back before the establishment of the United States. King of England gave us a charter to self-govern. And the state of Rhode Island comes in and tells us what to do on zoning. And in particular, with regard to this underlying vote this evening, they're telling us, we want you. No, not we want you. We demand, despite the fact that you have, as the gentleman said, 16% compliance on a 10% requirement. The state of Rhode Island is coming in and saying, we demand that you make your city more dense. And we demand that you live by our rules, because we know better as a state, not you as a city. Councilor Romley, if you make that as a motion, I will gladly second it.
I believe I did make the motion.
I will second that, Madam Chair.
All
Wait a
discussion?
minute, yes. We had 2 public community meetings about this, and not to mention, us as a council also had a workshop already. None of this had, like, and as I'm also, like, as I have read through the planning board too, there was nothing really significant that changed here.
Mhm.
So I'm inclined to just like allow it to move forward. I don't know how much more discussion that we need to have. I mean, other than what's here tonight.
I mean, this is going to require 2 votes anyway, so I think that we could move this forward tonight. And then we could take it up in the next couple of weeks and get some further information.
Right, we'd be happy to meet with any counselor who wants to have particular questions answered. It has gone through a public process already. We did look at the ideas, the foundational ideas. We went over the concepts at the workshop. It's already been before the planning board, the steward of our plans, where they've actually reviewed it very carefully and they've gone over, they made some edits, which are reflected in the plan that you see tonight. So there has been a lot of stewardship. In fact, it's been a real privilege and a luxury to be able to work and focus on this one chapter of a plan. Typically, when we do comprehensive planning efforts, we do all the chapters together. And we do, so the council's considered 12 or 13 chapters at once. It's really been a great intense focus that we've had. I think the situation of our housing is serious enough that we really should move forward with a product when we have the opportunity. And I would also like to introduce Richard Cromwell. He's a planning board member. He's been involved from the beginning. We had several planning board members who were involved in our weekly meetings about the effort as we've gone through the course of the planning. So we've had a lot of input from lots of different types of people. And he just would like to say a few words about this also.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Trish is saying about, we've spent a lot of time studying this. We've had a lot of meetings on it. We've had, as Councilor Lima has said, we've had public hearings on this subject and had a lot of public input as well.
Mhm.
And this is this is goals. This is an opportunity to focus on the goals that we want in the way of housing. All of us have agreed that housing is an important issue. And in order to address that, we need to have a modification of the comprehensive permit to address some of these things. And then we can move forward on things that are more specific and have more debate about the specifics of what's going on. But we really can't go forward without a modification of the comprehensive plan. So I thank you for your consideration. The planning board has been unanimous about this, and we're unanimous in our support of this. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to address the comments there. I don't think there's any resistance here on adopting this document and updating the comprehensive use plan. Certainly not on my part. I think for the folks who sit up here on this dais, I am one of the most pro housing folks on city council, and certainly am of the opinion that we need to build and we need to make changes to allow people to build housing. So I'm very enthusiastic about this, but this is the first time this document has been presented to us. So I want to recognize there's been some great workshops. The planning board and the planning department have invested a lot of time in this. My request to have more interactive workshop time to talk about it and ask questions is not reflective of any resistance to this.
Is there any other discussion on the continuing?
Yes, Madam Chair.
No, Councilor Holder.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds, so
Madam Vice Chair, I wasn't done speaking.
Sorry, I thought you were.
No. And so I don't want any of my requests here to have more time to study this and have Q&A to be interpreted as resistance. I'm enthusiastic about this process. At the same time, this final document is being presented to us for the first time. I have a lot of questions, and I don't like voting on things that I don't feel fully educated, fully informed on. And I don't think that this particular council night, I got 2 or 3 hours of questions I can go through. Do you want to do it tonight? Or would you rather do it another night during the day, during working hours as an open workshop? So that's what I'm requesting. I do believe if we vote on this tonight, we are giving the citizens and residents an impression that we approve of everything in here. And I'm not in a position to say that I do yet. I believe I will get there very quickly. But I would like some time and discussion with the administration, potentially members of the planning board. But let me cap that off by saying I have a lot of respect for the quality of work that has been done here.
And I'm also happy to do whatever the council feels that they need to do with this. Obviously, it's at your discretion.
Councilor Holder. Did you have a comment?
yeah, in this, we know we need housing, absolutely. And has the parking issues been addressed with this housing document? Because I didn't really see too much on it. And I know at our workshop we had at Innovate Newport, that became a big subject, especially when we're talking about the Gateway Center. You know, if we're going to build any housing units there, the current parking ordinances require us to have parking for each unit. And I think many of you know that the Gateway Center parking is crucial to a lot of employees in the downtown business area to park, because they live out of town. They can't afford to live here, so they have to park somewhere. So has parking been addressed with all the additional housing units we're looking to do?
So parking is actually part of our zoning code. And so the comprehensive plan talks about the ideas, the goals, plans, the ideas, and where we would put the housing, how many we need. We would need to develop zoning from that. And zoning would be how we would establish housing and its associated parking limits in each area.
So we have the opportunity to actually restructure our parking ordinances as needed.
Yes.
Councilor Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the amendment, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Reynolds. Thank you to the members of the planning board, and thank you to our consultants. As Mark said, I also have respect for everything you've done. One question. Unlike the zoning regulations that were forced on us by the state of Rhode Island, if we did not, by January 1st of 2024, enact a new set of ordinances, we were in legal trouble with the state. The state would essentially force upon us their own zoning laws, their own zoning code. If we agree to Councilor Romley's amendment this evening and we extend this vote until after additional public hearings or until Councilor Romley and the council decides it's time to vote, will we be in any trouble with the state? Notwithstanding any type of grant that we've received, city time, etc. Is there a state legal consequence to the city of Newport if we do not adopt this by a certain date?
No, there's no mandate. We would not be in trouble with the state. We have done this proactively to look at our housing issue and to help with a solution.
Thank you, Director.
Did you mention though that there's something about a grant? What did you say?
Right, we have gotten a technical assistant grant through Rhode Island Housing that's provided help from Libra. It's been a complete process, starting with the data collection where we did the build out study, and then it's led to the comp plan amendment. And the last piece of that is the companion zoning that will go with this.
Mhm.
So that would also come before the council, obviously for review and approval. But it's something that's, one of the sort of main bases for having a comprehensive plan in place is that it sort of sets the table for zoning.
Okay, any other comments on
Yes.
continuing this? Counselor
Yeah.
Napolitano?
Not so much on continuing. I trust planning and zoning departments. I trust the volunteers in our staff that they are putting us in the right direction. And I think to prolong this at this point, and I'm just going to remind you of one thing. Newport is 10 square miles, 7 square miles of landmass, and 3 underwater. So we have bigger problems than just to continue building. I agree. Housing needs to come in line, but we need a balance here. We need a balance so people can afford to live here. And I see this as moving us forward. And I certainly would welcome any additional information that they give us, but I do trust the people that we have put on planning, zoning, and our staff. Our staff has spent hours upon hours working on this and working with the consultants and trying to get us in the right position. I'm not happy about the legislation from the state, and I told Representative Sarkachi in person about it. And it's just not fair to Newport. And bringing up about the low-income housing and the higher-income housing, yes, we're at 16%. Other communities that have much larger land mass could build housing to make it affordable for employees who work here and younger people. And it's just not out there right now. So, I support moving forward tonight.
So one more comment on continuing, Counselor?
Madam Chair, Vice Chair. I also want to say to the comprehensive land use plan, just because this is implemented does not mean that you can't change it at any point at any time.
Right.
State law actually,
We can change it 4 times a year. It's designed for change.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to continue. All in favor?
oh, no, sorry, excuse me.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Nay. Okay, so we will go ahead and vote to approve the.
I have a lot of questions on this document, so I would like the opportunity to ask those now that we're voting on this. tonight.
Well, we have another chance at this for the second reading of the ordinance, and we have 2 weeks for you to ask those questions of
Madam
the
Chair,
planner.
point
the
of order.
planner.
It is the counselor's right to take as much time as he wants, as he needs for
We need
for the
to,
constituents he represents to ask the questions he wants. If we are indeed going to go into a marathon session on this, I would pause, or I would like to pause and ask my colleagues out of courtesy to do what I asked be done originally. Originally, I asked that the Stone Pier resolution be taken up before any debate.
I understand that, Mr. Carlin, okay, but we're on this right now.
Well, then,
So
Chair, I would
I-
like to make a motion to pause the
I,
debate on this and to move to the resolution naming the stone pier. And I would like a second on that, please.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. All right, so Madam Chair, what we are doing now is we are causing the folks who are here for a simple resolution renaming the stone pier after a great
Okay.
Newporter to wait
Yeah.
potentially hours.
Mr. Carlin,
this-
Mr. Carlin.
What can I
please.
do?
You're out of order here.
I am
And
certainly
and
not out of
yes,
order.
you are out of order, and
am
we
not
are
out of
doing this in the order that has been proposed in the in your motion. So
Madam Vice Chair.
I am going to make the motion to approve this ordinance on first reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Oh,
Madam
Uh,
Vice Chair.
Just a final comment here. If you have two members of this council that want time to ask questions and learn more, you are not getting resistance from passing this. You are getting two counselors who want to study more because we don't feel informed enough on what we're voting on. And we have not had the opportunity to ask really any detailed questions on a document that we're being presented for the first time that involves massive changes.
it's not.
For our
these are-
comprehensive land
first of
use
all,
plan.
These are not massive changes. And second of all, this is
It
just the
needs-
first reading. This is just the first reading of an ordinance. We have to.
Counselor, I have not interrupted you tonight.
Second.
Please allow me to finish my comments.
Hmm.
This does not feel like something that should be rushed. I don't know why we're shotgunning this tonight. I have not heard that there are any real repercussions to this plan or this council or this city in allowing a few of us to study this a bit more. That's the end of my comments. I don't agree with this vote tonight. I don't agree with rushing things when 100% of the council doesn't feel they've had the opportunity to study and ask questions. I'll leave it
Counselor-
at that. That's the end of my comments.
Thank you. Counselor Romley, we have another go at this. And we have 2 weeks in between to have another go at this. So there are plenty of questions that can be answered in between now and the next meeting. And more questions can be asked at the next meeting. But I think that we need to keep this moving. We've had the planning board working on this. We've had the planning department working on this. These are not significant changes. So I think that I'd like to have a vote to,
Chair.
yes.
Just how you decide to vote on when, it is fine, I think. But this is on the docket for a public hearing tonight on the first reading. So I at least want to bring it to your attention in the event there are members of the public here tonight.
Mhm.
who
Is-
wish to address the council or ask a question.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak?
Well, Madam Chair,
public.
I would like to comment before we open it to the public, since
Mhm.
we apparently are having this hearing tonight. What you said just a moment or two ago, with great respect, is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in open government. Just vote for it. We'll deal with it in 2 weeks. Just vote for it and move it on. Never mind your opinions. If that's the way we run government in the United States, we are in sad, sad trouble.
I don't think anyone is listening to me. We have 2 readings of an ordinance. We have 2 weeks to ask additional questions and present that to the public. That's what we have. If this were just 1 reading, I would certainly continue it, but it's not 1 reading. It's 2 readings. So we can keep moving forward. We need to keep moving forward. So,
Madam
is there
Vice Chair.
anyone from the public who would like to come up and speak? Motion to close the public hearing and approve ordinance amending chapter 4. Yeah.
I would just ask that you not make the motion to close the public hearing. I think it's important that the public hearing remain open for the second reading.
Okay, so we can't open it again in 2 weeks?
We would renotice.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay.
Public hearing open.
Okay, the public hearing remains open. Motion to approve ordinance amending chapter 14.04.010 entitled Comprehensive Planning and Land Use Act, first reading.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
One comment. I'm going to abstain from the vote.
You
I,
can't-
I
you
don't,
can't.
I can decide not to vote. That's my
Yeah.
option.
Robert's rules, you
Mhm.
cannot abstain. You have to vote.
Point of order.
Uh,
With the body's permission, the counselor can do what he pleases to do.
All in favor?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. We're gonna take the vote. All in
Can I-
favor?
Wait, hold on. I'm gonna deflect to city solicitor. Do we have to vote? Can we abstain? Do we have the option to abstain?
I will tell you that I do not know the answer of whether or not there's a rule prohibiting Counselor Romley from abstaining. My instinct is that he can abstain from the vote. I don't know the Roberts Rule of Order on.
I am not going to vote on this tonight because I'm not fully informed and I haven't had the opportunity to ask the questions I want to ask. And I do not vote on things that I'm not fully informed on. So I will not be voting on this tonight.
Okay. All in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed?
Nay?
Okay. Thank you. All right, your resolution, Mr. Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council, and thank you to the public, particularly those in the public who are here with us or watching the live stream who have been waiting for this resolution. I apologize for not having this heard first. Madam Chair, can I please have the resolution read by the clerk, or if the clerk prefers, I will read it myself. Okay, the clerk suggests I read it myself. This is a resolution of the Newport City Council, and I will read the entire resolution as opposed to just the resolve, because it's an important resolution to me and to many others, including those in the audience that I mentioned. Whereas Kevin N. Sheehy was a lifelong Fifth Ward resident and the epitome of a great Newporter who passed away far too early after a courageous battle with colon cancer on July 26, 2020. And whereas Kevin was the proud father of the love and joy of his life, his daughter, Keely Rose Sheehy. He was a graduate of Rogers High School in Newport, was the successful owner and operator of Newport Hardwood Floors for many years, and was a true friend to all who knew him and a loving son and brother. And whereas Sheehy was a loyal member of the Ancient Order of Hibernians, Dennis E. Collins Division I Newport, a member of the Newport Rugby Football Club, and a faithful parishioner of St. Mary's Church in Newport. And whereas Kevin was a capable waterman and a steward of Newport Harbor who spent countless hours on the bay, usually by way of Newport's Stone Pier. And whereas prior to his passing, Kevin was an ardent supporter and promoter of expanding the Stone Pier so that it may better accommodate the many residents and visitors who use it every day. And whereas it is in no small part due to Kevin's vision and efforts that the expanded pier is in place today. And whereas at its meeting on July 11th, 2024, the Newport Waterfront Commission voted unanimously to request that the Newport City Council officially act to name the new Stone Pier dinghy dock in honor of Kevin Sheehy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Newport City Council hereby authorizes that the Stone Pier dinghy dock henceforth be known to all as the Kevin N. Sheehy Stone Pier dinghy dock. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be presented to Ms. Keely Sheehy upon passage. Madam Chair, having read the resolution,
Second.
I ask for a second. Thank you for doing that. Madam Chair, one comment. Kevin was a great man, great family man, as I explained in this resolution, and a friend of me, friend of all. Let's unanimously pass this in his honor. Thank you.
Discussion? All in favor?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I won't add my own discussion, but are there any members of the Newport Waterfront Commission in attendance this evening, or past members? You know who I'm looking at, Paul. Say a couple of words, will you, please? I hate to put you on the spot.
Paul, come on up to the microphone, please. And name and address also.
I'm sorry to do that, Paul. It's important that we recognize Kev.
Paul Harden, 222 Cogshell Avenue in Newport. I served on the Waterfront Commission for 10 years and stepped down a little over a year ago. I served for chair 5 years on it. And I think it's an honorable thing to name the Stone Pier and Dingy Dock after Kevin. He's well known in the waterfront community, and I think it's an honorable thing to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to approve the consent calendar in its entirety. Do I have a second?
Second,
Discussion? All in favor? Licenses and permits, motion to approve an entertainment license, new Class A indoor and Class B outdoor, 49 Newport Beverage LLC, doing business as Saltwater, 49 America's Cup Avenue, to have entertainment daily from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. This is a second hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve an entertainment license, new Class A indoor and Class B outdoor, 1899 LLC, doing business as The Reef, 10 West Howard Wharf, to have entertainment daily from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. Existing conditions: no amplification after 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, no amplification after 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday and Sundays preceding a Monday holiday. No speakers on the north patio. Maximum decibel level is 65. This is a second hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
is there anybody from the public that wants to address? Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to approve a vittling license, new Cinnamon LLC, doing business to be determined, 140 Broadway. Do I have a
Second.
second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve a vittling license expansion, Carpe Nautem Restaurant LLC, doing business as Fifth Element, 107 to 111 Broadway, expanding the license to 105 Broadway on October 12th, 2024, from 12 p.m. to 9 a.m. Do I have a second?
Second,
Question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Is the applicant here tonight? It doesn't really matter.
Yes, he is.
Oh, he is? Not, okay. So it's for the Broadway Fair, obviously.
Correct.
One-day license.
Correct.
9 a.m. to whatever. Your physical location is where it is, Fifth Element, right?
Correct.
Where's 105? Is that the Dunkin' Donuts lot?
No, it's the parking lot right next door to it.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Communications from the city manager, action item 6314-24, application of the Bowen's Wharf Company, repairs and alterations to commercial boating facility. It is recommended that the council direct the administration to inform CRMC that the city has no objection to the project, provided and that the below conditions is made as part of the approval. And this has currently no budget impact. I move approval.
second,
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Action item 6315. The Department of Public Services recommends awarding the contract associated with the fuel system upgrade bid to the sole bidder, Rhode Island Hydraulics Company Incorporated of North Kingstown, Rhode Island, for a total project cost not to exceed $126,000, including the bid price of $123,690, and a contingency of $2,310 to be held in reserve by the city. This is currently budgeted. I move approval.
second,
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And this is action item 6316. It is recommended that council approve the attached resolution that authorizes the mayor to sign on behalf of the city pending final city solicitor review and approval of a final draft, the settlement agreement between the city of Newport and the Rhode Island Department of Transportation in the matter of City of Newport versus Rhode Island Department of Transportation by and through Peter Alvidi, the director, NM 2022-0232. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Galvin, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
Mhm.
Schedule this evening in that forum.
All right.
Liberty to describe some of the details of the settlement negotiation in that forum. Generally speaking, the state took property from the city as part of the bridge realignment program. As part of that, they compensated us approximately $515,000. We initiated litigation because we disputed that amount. Discovery commenced, negotiations commenced with DOT. In light of uncertainties with the result of litigation, both parties have agreed that an additional $125,000 for the city of Newport would be a responsible resolution of the dispute.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Any questions of the solicitor?
Yes, Mr. Galvin,
Yes.
thanks for playing hardball on our behalf.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Motion passes. Okay, action item 6307. This was continued from the last meeting. It is recommended that the council approve the attached resolution formally identifying the projects and allocations listed below for the bond referendum to be placed on the ballot for voter approval for the November 2024 general election. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kennedy, would you like to describe?
Madam Chair, please. I would like to continue this for 2 weeks until the mayor has an opportunity to be with us. It is not his fault that he cannot be with us this evening. He has an illness. No, what the hell? He
Well,
doesn't care. He has COVID.
well,
He can't be with us. This is arguably one of the 5 most important things that we vote on in this term. I would suggest delaying 2 weeks does no harm. We've heard delay requests earlier and the arguments for them. The mayor should be here and should be afforded the opportunity to comment on what is before us. I would ask that this be delayed, and I will make the motion to delay this to 2 weeks or until the next city council meeting, and I'd ask for a second.
okay, there's no second. So, Mr. Kennedy, could you just explain what this document is all about and what it is that we would be voting on?
Yes, as I mentioned, thank you for the opportunity. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, what is fixed is what the voters will see on the ballot on November 5th that is already approved and in stone from the General Assembly.
Mhm.
It has a variety of purposely vague language that ultimately sums up to $98.5 million to give the city maximum flexibility within the boundaries of the legislation wording presented.
Mhm.
What we are doing here tonight is not, specifically not, already allocating any particular amount of any particular item, but we do feel it is important for the council to come forth with the unified voice going forward, indicating where indicating where the $98.5 million number came from and what particular items we would like to accomplish with it. It gives an opportunity for the council to then take this to the voters as well as the staff and carefully articulate the individual items that are very, very important to the city's future, that are described in detail from the capital improvement plan, from the workshop in January, all the way through to the General Assembly's enabling legislation on July 1st, when it was signed by Governor McKee, through to what we now believe at this point in time is a good estimate of where the $98.5 million should go. Now, having said that, it's important to note that this is a point of departure, which means that the very minute we say that this is what we're going to do, probably something will change along the line. And that's okay. The nature of a 5-year capital improvement program will always involve change. So it's also important to note that that each one of these individual items will have to be voted on like any other budget line items in the future by council action. So we are not establishing any policy tonight. We are not establishing any expenditures. We are merely establishing what we feel is important for the voters to know, what we intend to do if the bond is improved, to improve the future condition of our city.
So this is just really an informational document for the press and for the city to put out so that the public will know what they are voting on.
That's absolutely correct, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, at the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I will offer an amendment.
Is there any discussion before Councilor Carlin's amendment? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Manager Kennedy. Madam Chair, I would like to amend the proposal to remove the $5 million allocation for the renovation of the Maha Center and replace said removal with a $500 allocation to the, $5 million allocation to the city's utilities department for the purpose of helping to clean Almy Pond. I don't want to talk about it until there's a second. If there's a second, and that's all I'll say.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Are we at a point where we can make these changes?
So I believe Rob Schultz is here. Rob, can I have you come up and talk a little bit about Almy Pond? There is a public-private venture partnership going on right now that is enabling some of the preliminary work.
Mhm.
Rob's
With-
an expert in that.
With great respect, Manager Kennedy, she asked a question that I think is appropriate for legal rather than anybody else. She being the chair, asked if it was appropriate that we make said motions. Are we in a position where we can do such? I'd rather have Attorney Galvin opine on that.
The extent the council is being asked to vote on and approve this document, I think it is able to be a motion made to amend it.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd rather have discussion first on the amendment and then allow Director Schultz, Manager Kennedy, or anybody else who wants to speak on it, speak on it.
Okay.
Fair enough? On the amendment?
So do you want, did you make your a
I
motion?
did, and I had a
Okay.
second. On the
Okay.
amendment?
Okay, so we can
Thank you.
discuss the
Almy
amendment.
Pond is one of the, according to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management and the Rhode Island Department of Health, it is one of the most, if you will, disgusting ponds, bodies of water in the state of Rhode Island. It is loaded with toxic underlings. It is loaded with bad stuff. It has been a project for many years in the Coggeshall, Almy Pond, and surrounding area, the watershed, to clean it up. And nothing to date has been significantly done. Although, as the manager mentioned, and as I'm sure Director Schultz will talk about, there have been recent efforts by the city of Newport. But the efforts by the city of Newport and by private partners with the city come nowhere near to the amount of money that we need in order to make significant safety and health improvements with regard to the pond, which is why, as I told the watershed community at an open meeting several months ago, this is why I'm making this proposed amendment this evening. We need to put public safety and the neighborhoods and surrounding areas' health first. There's a lot of kids and a lot of elderly, not to mention everybody in between who live in the area. It's a health hazard. I would ask my colleagues to support my motion when it's time to vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Lima.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I don't think that this is appropriate. We had a conversation. We've been doing several budget workshops, prioritizing exactly what we needed. We actually, we did not have any have this discussion about using possible bond monies to be reallocated to Almy Pond. I'm certainly sympathetic as there are a ton of infrastructure issues that are going on, 535 million to be exact. But trying to reallocate money from this 98.5 billion bond where something, so then that means something here on this item has to be taken off.
He's saying the Maha Center,
Right, like which one is it gonna, what?
the Maha.
Why?
I'm not answering. My motion speaks for itself.
I'd like to.
Why
comment.
would you systemically take from the north end? And especially when you're talking about that, one of the highest concentrations towards family, we need administrative buildings. We need, we can also expand in terms of, city administration departments. Like there was a whole presentation being done. And for you to sit here and do this last minute is disingenuous.
Madam Chair, I apologize to Councilor Lima. I did not want to answer because it would prolong the meeting, which is, that's not something I'm unfamiliar with. I usually prolong meetings, but I will give you the courtesy of an answer. I don't believe that the Maha Center $5 million project is necessary. And I certainly think that is absolutely in today's market conditions, as Councilor Romley stated 3 months ago at our public hearing. It is absolutely ridiculous, the amount of money that we are proposing to pay per square foot for said renovation. I know for a fact that tomorrow, today, yesterday, a year, 10 years ago, Almy Pond needed this help. So that's why I'm doing it. Thank you.
I'd like to comment on this since I seconded it.
Yes, Councilor Romley.
And, I seconded the motion, not necessarily because I agree 100% with it, but because I think open debate is a good thing. And councilors should be allowed open debate when they request it. I do think it is an 11th hour change here that is challenging for this council to make. However, and I would not personally be voting in favor of dropping the Maha Center or Almy Pond in this document here. However, I would be supportive of not dropping the Maha Center, but adding Almy Pond as a line item here with a TBD on it. So that is a change that I could support and that I would vote on.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm going to ask our city solicitor, what does this mean if we add a budget line item to the bond?
My understanding is, again, this document is simply laying out a vision for allocating these funds. And there's going to be, when each one of these things comes up for discussion over, when it's time to go through these projects, it can be moved. I think, I don't think, and I think the city manager spoke to this at the outset, this isn't locking in these numbers to these line items. It's a vision statement for where the city sees it going at the moment. So I think it would be acceptable to include another project that's been brought up with the administration and the council to determine how it gets allocated going forward.
How would we do that, though? We have $98.5 million, so something's got to go. So why?
Well, and I'm sorry, I don't, it's not my place to interrupt here, but I don't know that this document is a required document, period. It is not. We could do nothing, and the ballot initiative is still going to appear before the voters on November 5th with a $98.5 million amount. My fear is that the electorate will not know what it's voting for if it doesn't have a good idea of what the itemized line items are.
And just for clarification, this is an estimation from our city administration. This does not necessarily mean that all of the projects will necessarily be funded.
Absolutely.
Maybe other costs that will incur.
There may, some items will come in overestimate, some items will come in underestimate. It's perfectly plausible to put Almy Pond as a TBD line item if you'd like, because that becomes what you're publicizing to the voters. You're essentially saying, if we have some spare change that comes out, maybe we got more grant reimbursements than we thought on a particular line item. Maybe an item came in below budget.
Some of these are purposely made to be high-end estimates so that we do have a little bit of flexibility as time goes on. So having that in there, absolutely nothing wrong with it, and you won't have any objection from me
Okay,
Madam Chair.
as a TBD.
So should we vote on Mr. Carlin's amendment and then vote on Mr. Aramles?
I'd like to
I-
suggest Mr. Carlin just amend his own proposal if he's willing.
Would you like to amend your proposal?
I would not. I offered the opportunity for the city council to support a public safety and health issue, and I provided the means of underlying funding. It's unfortunate that I had to, in my proposed amendment, remove the Mahat Center rehabilitation, but I have no intent to increase this bond to $103.5 million. I will do so only if necessary, and that means only if I lose my proposed amendment.
Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
I have a question. I don't know if Mr. Schultz can come
Yeah.
up again. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. The $5 million, do we have any idea of how much money we need to fix Almy Pond or?
There's an order of magnitude cost that I've been working with, but that order of magnitude cost is plus or minus 50%. That placeholder when we're having those discussions is $30 million.
30 million?
30 million. And so that could go 45, could not. We don't have enough of the field engineering and that to really to get a strong number. It's very similar. I think it was commented on the infrastructure issues that we have all over. We're shifting from just a singular focus on any of the infrastructures to try to make sure that we're including multi-benefits, bringing in other departments, passive recreation, maximizing partnerships and looking at things from a dramatically different viewpoint than traditional. That's the concept right now that we've been working on for a couple of years with a very active group. I think that highlights neighborhood involvement, various environmental organizations, academia, et cetera, going forward. You know, we have a lot more work to do there. The overall vision would be to, there's several problems. We have done a multi-million-dollar investment in that watershed. The fact of the matter is, more water coming into that pond is so concentrated that it's hundreds of times up above what the natural capacity is. And so we really can't remove that by doing small projects. It has to be a massive project. If you don't do that, anything we do in the pond or some of those mitigation efforts really aren't going to get a return on it. So that $30 million order of magnitude cost is to basically take all the city property around that pond, do a rehabilitation of all the wetlands, constructed wetlands, hide gray stormwater in there, and also interconnect it with passive recreation and other elements. But enough of the foundational engineering hasn't been done to see what scale that has to be at. It's also dramatically different from a regulatory standpoint than what DEM has historically allowed or CRMC has historically allowed. It's been allowed in other states and other areas. So we really need a lot of cooperation from our regulatory partners. You're going to hear that continually as we look at things. It's daylighting the Elizabeth Brook has some of the same factors, stuff around North and South Beacon Pond, other areas we're looking at that the reality is we can't continue to do the same thing over and over again. We're not going to get different results. So there's a bunch of moving pieces there. So, you know, my department can spend any money you give me on any project you assign, and we're going to make progress if it's going to get us there or not. None of the values that are in here for utilities are going to approach what we need. So Almy Pond, if we use 30 million, I think daylighting the Elizabeth Brook 65. north and southeastern pond, planning level, it's like 45 to 50 something million. So all of these are literally down payments on what we need and continue progress.
Mr. I'm just curious. We've talked about, sewer issues there and, septic issues there. We've talked about, fertilizer issues. What is the biggest issue that is contaminating that pond?
Stormwater.
Stormwater. Is it stormwater mixing with the fertilizer?
It's everything that's in it. And so, we haven't sampled in a while, but coming back, it's the activities that everyone's doing. So some of it's atmospheric, some of it's road pollutants, some of it, and I lost, unfortunately, the drone flyovers when we had the computer incident. But I mean, you see some of the lawns in that watershed there, neon green. Then you see some that aren't watered and whatnot and more natural. Realistically, lawns and grass are probably one of the worst things that we have as far as contributing pollutant load and not being overly great. There's a bunch of other factors that come in, but when we test the runoff coming in, it's screaming high. To actually come and put what the assignments on, you'd have to drill down a little more. But overall, it's the general activities that the residents and visitors and the city itself is doing in that watershed.
Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair. I'd also like to highlight that our $98.5 million bond is one way that we were thinking of, but if we really want to be robust in terms of generating some real revenue, we should really come back and think about passing a conveyance tax. One that, again, was estimated for $125 million annually. Like, we need this money, and $98.5 million here isn't going to solve the systemic issue. There's $535 million worth of infrastructure projects. That's not even including how we move forward.
All
Madam
right.
Chair, please.
Yes.
Question for Councilor Lima, please. Where in the world are you coming up with revenue for the city of Newport from a conveyance tax that equals $125 million?
That was based off of, so when the city administration had originally brought up the conveyance tax, there was information that stated as reflective of Block Island. I think that was around the estimate of the annual estimate.
With great respect to you, Councilor, there is absolutely zero possibility unless we assess the conveyance tax at.
Sorry, it was 20.9 million. I'm sorry, I
No,
completed
it's not
it.
even, it's not even that. I mean,
Okay, I think-
we can deal with that another time, but I want to make sure that the public understands that there's no
Excuse me, 12.
question about the fact that the conveyance tax would raise nowhere near what you're talking about. May I, Director Schultz, is there any other pond in the city of Newport, any other body in the city of Newport, water body, that comes even remotely close to Almy Pond in terms of what the DEM classifies as the high level of toxins that you just described?
Depends which way you want to look at it. So if you're going to compare the drinking water supplies and the standard that you would apply to the drinking water supplies compared to just the recreational use or potential use of Almy Pond, there is a difference. But unfortunately, every single water body that we have is heavily impacted. Almy Pond is by far the worst. But there's other elements that come in when you start to evaluate, how you're going to look at it.
Director, are there any other bodies of water? Thank you for the answer. Are there any other bodies of water in the city that DEM has issued recent alerts on, or alerts in the last couple of years notifying the public that this is dangerous, this is a body of water you should stay far away from?
Again, unfortunately, you're going to have some of the drinking water bodies that have had that same. I think you just had some that are not in the city of Newport that are outside. I have to go back through.
Yeah, no, I'm just interested in Newport.
Almy Pond, in essence, the position that we've taken with the state is that warning for blue-green algae and associated toxins is basically stay. It should never be lifted. So I don't believe that they've continued to do some of the sampling since we've had that. There's not enough that's going to change or remove that toxin. So that's been in place for some time, unfortunately. The other ones that have come in, whether they some of the others, I think the only one that probably hasn't is Lily Pond. All the other ones over the past handful of years intermittently will have it.
The 34% level that Almy Pond is classified as with DEM classification, RIDOH classification, Department of Health classification, how does that compare to nearby Lily?
Lily Pond's exceptionally better than
Exceptionally better.
I think
Uh,
we could, I
if-
think we're
if
getting a
there's-
little off track on what we needed. to
Cut me
talk
off again,
about.
Lynn.
Well,
Please
but
do.
I think
Yeah.
that we are getting a little
Appreciate you.
off track. I think that,
Lynn,
we're
do you have
talking
any
about-
idea about how a democracy is run and how,
do you have
as
any,
you cut off,
I'm-
Councilor Romley earlier,
I'm trying
anything
to
you
run
do
this
not agree
meeting
with,
in
you
an
simply stop
I'm not
debate.
disagreeing with
I
you.
mean,
I'm,
you know,
listen,
I-
I'm just saying, we're here.
I surrender.
We're here to talk about what is going to be presented to the public for the bond. That's what we're here to talk about. We're not here to talk about Almy Pond. And Lily Pond. We can have a workshop on all of that because I think that is very important information for the public to have. And I've had conversations with Rob about it, about fertilizers and which we should do and.
I wish the
So
mayor were
I'm
here.
just-
I wish the real chairman were here.
Okay, good. Well, I'm
Oh,
glad, you know.
please.
So, okay, so we're gonna move on. Is there any discussion on Counselor Carlin's amendment? Okay, we're gonna vote on Counselor Carlin's amendment. Would you like to restate your amendment?
No.
Okay, let's, all in favor of his amendment? All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, do we need an amendment for Counselor Aramli's TBD
No,
amendment?
he didn't make an amendment.
Oh, did you make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion. I think it is a topic of discussion. I think clearly there's some interest from some members of this council to start looking at Almy Pond. If there's no dollar amount assigned, but it's simply a TBD, I think it references that this is on our radar screen to the public and that
Okay.
some of this money could wind up there. So I will make a motion to
Is
add
there a
Almy
second
Pond
on that
as
motion?
a TBD with no dollar amount.
Is there a second?
I'll second it just for a quick discussion,
Okay,
if I may.
Counselor
I think it's a
Holder.
bigger issue than just having it on this bond. I think it's something that should be completely separate by itself that we look at.
Counselor Lima.
I forgot what I was going to say. Never mind. Thank you. Well said, Counselor Holder.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll vote. All in favor? All opposed? Nay. Motion fails. Okay, so where were we? This is an educational document for the public to understand what is on the bond when they go into the voting booth and what it is that they're actually voting on.
That's correct.
Okay, so we need to approve this as a body, as a city council?
That is my request, pending any other amendments that may come up. What
Okay,
you have, just to bring it to your attention, what you have in front of you that I gave you before. If any members of the public want to see what the council sees, I have some extra copies over here on the table.
okay,
But this articulates, because there was some questions about it 2 weeks ago, this articulates where we were at the capital improvement plan process end at the end of January.
Mhm.
There's a brief chronology up top. And then it talks about the line items as they were 2 weeks ago on 8/14. And there was some concern that some things had changed. And I just wanted to clear the record. One of the things that wasn't brought up 2 weeks ago
Mhm.
was that the city yard design and relocation was removed. It was initially assessed as part of the bond. It was removed by the finance department because we just weren't going to get there. The total was going to bring us to 117.5 million,
Mhm.
not tenable. So it was removed. And what that did is it freed up $33.75 million for other things. When you include the grant match that we have since learned we have received for Cliff Walk. So it's about an extra 20 million from the city yard design and about 9.75 million from the grant match. So knowing that we have a long laundry list, as Councilor Lima aptly pointed out, of capital projects to work on. Finance Department did a great job prioritizing what we could fill in that place. And that's how all of the items on the added items list in the center column came to be. The other part of the debate 2 weeks ago was about one particular line item, and that involved the landfill and disposition of soil item. Upon further review, there was some challenge to the word, to any reference to Rogers itself, the building, does not need to be in there. It could be, it is right now, it could be amended out. But ultimately, it was determined that the governing legislation that was enacted on July 1st mentioned nothing about any school buildings. It mentioned generically about facilities for some of the other projects, but nothing is in there about the school. So there's no reason for us, there's no mandate for us to have that in here in an advertisement document. So if there is to be an amendment to remove it, there would be no reason not to do that. I leave that to you as the governing body. But I wanted to point that out since it did come up at the last meeting.
Thank you. Yeah.
Madam Vice Chair, if I can, in terms of the completed school language, so to your point, you're saying that it doesn't matter, but I'm sort of concerned about what the legislation, how it was written, and does that affect our bonding?
There's room in the legislation right now. If we wanted to use it on a school facility, we could, because the legislation language generically talks about facilities.
Yeah.
So there's enough wiggle room in there, and that's by design.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion on this?
Sure. On that item, Manager Kennedy, can you explain to us the $10 million line item that appears with current language, as you said, regarding and the school? Let me pull it up for you so that not only you, but the members of the public can be aware, because obviously this has changed a bit as well from the original.
If anything highlights the nature of estimates, this is that line item.
Of course it is.
You're absolutely correct.
Of course. So tell us, please, under public facilities, line item, Rogers HS landfill and disposition of remaining soil, semicolon, Rogers completion, allocation 10 million. Explain to us in detail what your intent, what the city's intent is with that.
So on August 14th, 2 weeks ago, the intent was to give us flexibility if we needed to draw from that for school completion fund. Right now, and this is an estimate, but right now, some of it will depend on contingency funds that may be refunded. But right now, looks at about $3.3 million remaining for the school. I do not want to get into a long drawn out acrimonious debate on the school side. I'm just stating where we're at with that. That will be for another day. But that 3.3 million leaves about, if my math is correct, 6.7 for the landfill remediation and disposition of soil. You're probably correct that that is likely not to be enough if we were to include all three of those things. But there are several unknowns about the soil pile and the landfill remediation. We still have some soil testing to do on the landfill site itself. There is legislation that the Assembly that is reducing the threshold for arsenic content in the soil, which may, I stress may, enable us not to have to move some or all of that soil off-site after all. We still might have to, but we won't know until we get some of the final soil testing done and ultimately figure out the number of cubic feet that we would need to move. We may be able to regrade a significant portion of that and potentially put a nice green space there with a park after we cap it, of course. Capping it also factors into this.
Right.
Will we, even if we were to move the school facility under as a consideration for what we're advertising to the public, and even if we're able to regrade the soil and recap it, would we still need all of that 10 million? Maybe. I wish I could tell you for sure. It's a moving target because there's a lot of variables that remain.
I appreciate that. Are you owning this? And, I don't mean to put the burden on you. You arrived on the job just some 1 month or so ago. Are you owning this document? Is this your recommendation to us?
This is my recommendation to you.
How much of that 10 million do you want to spend on continuing the Rogers High School project? And how much of that 10 million do you want to spend on getting rid of that massive toxic dirt pile in my district?
We don't know. It's just like how you tried to amend, or actually Counselor Romley tried to amend to say a TBD line for Almy Pond.
Now, with
They-
respect, in Naomi Pond, I gave you a very specific number of 5 million, and I gave you that number while substituting a previous $5 million. So I was quite clear as to how much it would be and where it was coming from. In this particular line item, we have do you know? You just said it was fluid, a guess. Do you know how much it's going to cost the city of Newport to get rid of that toxic dirt pile from Rogers High School site?
It's an estimation.
I didn't ask you the question, Council Lima. I asked the manager.
It's a fair question. I would say, I'm just not comfortable answering that until I know more about how much that pile will need to remove. If we need to remove it all, I'm almost certain that it will cost at least 10 million.
So what we should do again is, without any real evidence, without any real solid numbers, as was suggested earlier by Chair Segley, we should simply vote on this, vote yes, and pass it on to the next hearing without having actual numbers, without having, and along those lines, how much do you propose to spend on the Rogers completion of that 10 million?
I'm not necessarily advocating for that one way or another. I leave that to you as the amending body.
Who put that in the document we're voting on?
So that came to me in my turnover.
Do we have an idea of where that came from?
We do.
Okay, can you share that with us?
There was pressure from our legislative delegation. I don't know who, but I do know that there was pressure from that delegation, and I believe it came to the previous director of finance. And I'm not throwing her under the bus by any means.
Not at all. We all love her. How much did the legislator in question ask you to put, or ask the previous director to put towards Rogers completion?
I can't say.
I'm-
that.
Madam Chair.
Mr.
That's right.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
I spoke to this legislator and she presented the same wording for the legislation as Representative Carson. So she did not change so let's not say these things.
Madam
Madam Chair.
Yes.
To Council Carlin, if you'd like to make an amendment and take that word, the wordage of Rogers completion out, we could do that.
I'm sure I can. I don't intend to vote for this at all. I mean, I would encourage, if this is what we're putting before the voters, I would encourage a strong no. This is riddled. This is a fiscally irresponsible body. This is riddled with spending we would never do in our own homes. And if this is what's before us and this is what we put before the voters, I intend to make a strong campaign against a yes vote on this.
Well,
Madam Chair.
Yes, Counselor Napolitano.
It's rather ironic, we talk about Almy Pond, and I agree, and we have done a lot of work at Almy Pond. Obviously, it needs a lot more. But it's kind of ironic that Mr. Schultz gets up and tells us it's going to need another 30 million. So we're going to take the 5 million from the Maha Center and do what? Scratch the surface. I mean, to come out with this on the docket the night of, and suddenly think that everybody in the audience, if you think you're confused, we're confused.
Madam Chair.
Totally unexpected. Totally unexpected. I mean, staff does the best job they can to come up with figures for us. Yes, in the future, Newport needs $535 million more to fix all the problems that we have, but we're not going to get it all from the taxpayers.
Just for
So,
clarification, Madam Chair, can you
Excuse me, I'm
tell,
talking.
I would like to make a point of clarification.
Point-
Can you tell
Yes.
us what is totally unexpected?
Councilor Napolitano is speaking, please.
I have a point of clarification then, please.
Councilor Napolitano speaking.
It's just, this is the second meeting we're going through this. I just would like a little civility when you're asking for something. And, it would be nice to receive some phone calls or some sort of written transmission to other council members, what you're thinking, why it would be good. We didn't get any of that, where it's like we sit up here and all of a sudden, let's take the 5 million from the Maha Center and let's put it toward Almy Pond when Rob gets up and states that it's going to be probably 30
Madam
or
Chair,
40
now I will make
million.
a point of order, please.
So
We are not dealing with the
you are
Almy Pond
so
issue.
rude.
I'm making a point of order.
You're rude.
I would like to make a point of order. May I make a point of order?
You have one point of order. Go.
My point of order is we dealt with the Almy Pond issue several minutes ago. It's over. What we're talking about now is Rogers High School. Can we please talk about that item?
Yes, I will talk about that item. The Rogers High School, we are going to need more money to finish Rogers High School. And if we don't finish Rogers High School, we're not going to get the 50-something% reimbursement. So if we don't finish it and we don't use possibly some of the money from this bond, I don't know where we're going to get it from. Also, the Rogers landfill, I do believe there's a misnomer there. I believe it should be the Harrison Avenue landfill, because that landfill really does not belong to the school. It belongs to the city. So,
Took out any reference to a title. It just said, if you look on the far right column, it says just landfill remediation.
fine, that's absolutely fine. Okay. So, but it is a city responsibility to remediate that. And we can possibly remediate it with the soil that is at Rogers High School now, and then cap it with another cleaner soil. We've talked about this ad nauseum here. And so I think we need to move forward with a vote on this. I think we've had our discussion, and we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Public discussion, please, Madam Chair.
That's true.
Okay, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? I'm terribly sorry. Thank you.
I think we're forgetting one thing, what you should be doing with this document. Is you gotta use it to sell a bond, 98.5 million.
Yeah.
By including this stuff for Rogers, is that gonna help people vote for it or not? We
Well,
already got 144 million in place. And you're gonna put one another 10.
well, we need whatever the amount we need, we're gonna need money to finish the school to get the 55% reimbursement. So I don't know what to say about that. I do believe that there are people in the community who support the new Rogers High School. They wouldn't have voted for it if they didn't. So, and I think that they understand that there were a lot of issues having to do with supply chain and COVID and estimates that were done before COVID. And so I think that that's something that, we have to deal with the reality of that.
At some point, you gotta stop blaming people, get on.
Well, but it was a reality. And unfortunately, we were stuck in the middle of that reality for a long time.
Here's my objection to that line item that you've got in there.
Mhm,
It says complete Rogers. Right?
mhm.
Is Rogers going to get it complete?
We're gonna
Is it
need,
going to have a track?
no,
Well, if I look at that, I think it's going to have a track.
well, when I look at that, I look at the building, but that's how I see it. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
so I understand what you're saying. I understand that.
I think
but I-
this to me is deception. You aren't going to
Is
get,
there
you
any-
aren't going to get a complete Rogers that you set out to make 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And you, at the very least, you ought to put in there what you aren't getting. You aren't getting a track, you aren't getting automotive facility, you aren't getting cosmetology, you aren't getting admin spaces. That should be included in the request for the bond.
There was, yes, I don't want to relitigate this, but this, the cosmetology and the automotive was never part of this building.
But
It
you
was,
aren't getting
it wasn't.
I think it was.
So, do you have a comment? Go ahead. Louisa, go ahead.
I'm saying that the document as exists now is deceptive. You aren't telling the whole truth.
Hi, my name is Amy Machado. I live at 12 Burdick Ave. I have a daughter at Rogers High School, and I would say that including that in the bond will absolutely help get that passed. And I would love to see our older generations actually put their whole chest out there to fight for our younger generations. Thank you.
And Louisa Boatwright, 46 Second Street, co-chair of the school building committee. This is now my at least fourth time coming here, many times with parents, residents, and teachers advocating to finish Rogers. So this is not new. Also, over 78% of the body voted to have Rogers. So there's a very large will to have this completed. The last time I was here advocating for this, defining the both project and the amount of dollars left, I had said I would absolutely be promoting the bond if you guys ensure that finishing Rogers as we have it as a project today, not with all those things on it, just to finish the building and make the ground safe with a certificate of occupancy is what we've asked for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to highlight, I know that we've had significant conversation in regards to the school and whether or not to strike Rogers completion or not. But I just want to highlight $98.5 million of the bond. The funding items that are requested here have to do with five different categories. The first one is the intergenerational resiliency and sustainability. That includes Parati Park, our seawall repairs, pier improvements, Easton's Beach nourishment study, our beach study, Easton's demolition, cliff walk repair as well. The second category is roads and sidewalks. It's specific to Van Zant's bridge removal, regrading, and lower roads, as well as the FY 2025 and 2026 road improvement program, and Aquidneck Park sidewalks. The third subject is utilities, which falls into the Elizabeth Brook study and preliminary design, North End stormwater, Easton's pond hardening project, stormwater share of potential grant match. And the fourth subject is public facilities. So the North End, public safety, acquisition of land, design, engineering. Yes, Rogers High School landfill disposition of remaining soil, Rogers completion, as well as the redesign and renovation of the Maha Center. And finally, the programmatics in terms of FY 2025's final allotment for the Muni ERP conversion, which has to do with upgrades in our computer systems, as well as bond issuance costs. So just to be clear, there is a ton of things, investments that the city, as well as the council, has spoken about over the last 7 months, at least, at length, and held workshops and understood and listened to our city administration in terms of prioritizations and what we were going to spend on. So, Councilor Carlin, for you to just say no to this bond. I mean, some of these things you went in on, like even the beach nourishment study.
Yeah.
Like you're just going to say no because of a line item for Rogers completion?
I'll answer that question since it was asked to me. No, I'm absolutely not going to say no just because of that. I've outlined the reasons why I'm going to vote no if it is the document before us. And if it's the document that goes to the voters, I'll explain to the voters why they should vote no. I was not involved in any way with a discussion other than a capital improvement plan discussion about beach nourishment. I did not suggest the $12.5 million line item for beach nourishment. I certainly voted against wrecking First Beach before we had a plan to do a replacement. We shot first and aimed later. So what you said is absolutely incorrect, Counselor.
Okay, we have a lot of important projects on this list, and one for the Parati Park bulkhead is very important. And it's very, I want to say that it's very important for this bond to pass in order to help us with some, just to put a dent in some of the infrastructure issues that we have to deal with. And so I'm going to ask for a vote on this. All in favor of presenting this to the public?
Yeah, second. Or are we voting?
Yes, yes.
Okay, aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Excuse me, how about opposition?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I think
all
it was
opposed.
clear that I was going to vote
Okay,
no, but
okay,
it is part of the procedure.
All opposed? Okay. All right, moving on. We have no appointments to boards and commissions. We have no council liaison updates, and we're on to resolutions. Mr. Carlin, you're on for Energy and Environment Commission. Please make your motion.
Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, first I'll move the motion. At the appropriate time, I'll offer an oral amendment. I'd like a second on the motion itself so that we can move into discussion and an amendment.
Second.
What do we just second? What are we seconding?
We started the process of debating.
Well, but can you read the resolves and?
No,
so
we
that
don't need
can-
to read the whole thing. Everybody knows what it is. If you want me to read the whole darn thing, I'll read it, but I'm offering an amendment, as I said, at the appropriate time. What I did was I moved the motion before us. Councilor Romley seconded it so that we can begin the discussion. When we begin the discussion, as the chair lets me know when when the chair lets me know when, I will offer an appropriate amendment.
We have a second, so discuss.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Would you like me to offer the amendment now, or would you like to discuss the underlying original resolution?
Well, I need to clear something up. Did we have a second for the original resolution? Is that what your second was for?
To allow debate to commence, yes.
Okay. All right, but did you make a motion to approve this resolution?
I did, and it
Okay.
was seconded by Councilor Romley.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to offer an amendment. My amendment is, and it's an oral amendment. My amendment is to strike the third whereas completely. And my amendment is to add, let me back up just one moment. Bear with me, and I thank you for that patience. My amendment is to strike the third whereas completely. My amendment is to strike the first resolved completely. And my amendment is to add to the last resolved, in addition to the language that I'm about to say, which is in the original. Resolved that the Newport City Council requests the city administration arrange and conduct a public hearing in as timely a manner as possible, semicolon. Doing so, the city administration and the city council want me to continue? Doing so, the city administration and the city council are asking for respect and dignity at all public meetings. And I will explain, before I ask for a second, I'll explain why I did this. And I thank Councilor Romley. I don't want to get into a discussion here tonight, especially since it's been so long a meeting. I don't want to get into a discussion about uh, laying blame on the commission. I think everybody understands my opinion. So I am striking the third whereas. The third whereas originally said, at this same forum, wind farm opponents were not permitted to offer their contrary opinions. Strike it. We can debate
That's the
that.
Second, whereas.
Third whereas, I'm asking to be deleted entirely. And I'm doing so in order to add to the last resolved. The last resolved, you just heard the language about the city will hold, not the commission, the city administration will hold a meeting whereby wind farms, and in particular, those opposed to wind farms, will be given their opportunity to air their opinions. With that, we as a city council are also putting a value on fairness. We're putting a value on the right for everyone to be able to speak their opinion. And we're putting a value on dignity and respect for any commission that represents the city council in the city of Newport. So I'm trying to do my very best, and I certainly will be opposed, but I'm trying to do my very best not to have language in the original resolution which casts blame. I simply want the opponents of wind farms to be able to have their say in a public hearing, which will be conducted by the city management. The city manager can arrange such a public hearing in any way that he wants, not the Energy and Environment Commission. The city manager and the city management team will conduct this hearing. Very long explanation. I apologize. I should have done a written amendment rather than an oral amendment, but I think everybody understands what I'm trying to do here. Having said the language, the oral amendment language earlier, I ask for a second.
Second.
Madam Chair,
Discussion. Yes, Counselor Holder.
uh, first, let me ask, Council Carlin, can you explain to us the point of this resolution from the beginning before the amendments? So I'm trying to understand, why are we getting involved in a conversation or discussion on something that we have no control of?
Great question.
We don't have, it's not our windmills that we're looking to put up or take down. So the fact that we as a city council want to get involved with this, I think is scary, to be honest with you. I just don't think this is something that we should be touching. There are plenty of opportunities for anyone who's pro or anti-wind farms or anything else for that matter. There's plenty of public places to go, newspapers, online, social media, what have you, that they can put their point up. But to have the city create a forum for that is a slippery slope, to say the least.
To answer your question, this really has nothing to do with the underlying question of whether or not you support or don't support wind farms. I vehemently disagree with littering our coast with wind farms, but that's not the point. The point is that the Energy and Environment Commission is a commission which the city council created and whose members we appoint. What I am asking for is not to debate whether we agree with the Biden administration or agree with anybody else who is allowing these wind farms to be permitted as of now. My point is, we must allow both sides of this debate to be heard. We must allow a fair and equal treatment for those who oppose wind farms like I do to have their fair share. If we create a city commission and we appoint members to that city commission, we expect that city commission to hear both sides. That's why I'm offering this.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Counselor Lima.
I actually think that our our EEC actually did, our Energies and Environments Commission actually did achieve that. And I just want to sort of walk us through the history. So like this all started in March of 2023, where our Energies and Environments Commission hosted a public meeting at Innovate Newport, in which almost 100 people were in attendance. And it was actually the public that asked for a continued open forum to continue the discussions with regards to offshore winds, climate change, and the impacts. And so I actually commend our Environment and Energies Commission because they voluntarily, they graciously took on the willingness to oblige the public on this by hosting the series of events. Hence why they had come to the council. Council had drafted a resolution. We had talked about these series, and unanimously approved it, by the way. And as a direct result, so we want to talk about public forums. In terms of marketing, our comms director advertises through our social media sites and newspaper. It was distributed through the Aquidneck Island Caucus. It was on EcoRI's calendar. There were also printed flyers by members of the community that actually hung it around the city. It was clear that this was an inclusive event with panelist discussions, which highlighted the time for audience questions. So this was an open meeting. And so just to highlight these series, the first meeting was done on July 23rd, which highlighted climate change. And our panelists included elected officials, a Brown University provost for sustainability, and our own Save the Bay's executive director. The second meeting was on August 8th, which talked about fisheries, climate change, offshore winds. Our panelists included a URI professor in oceanography that completed a study in fisheries, representatives from NOAA, representatives from NOAA, offshore wind, from the Offshore Wind Ecology Branch, an executive director from the East Farm Commercial Fisheries Center for Rhode Island, and also the executive director of commercial fisheries on Research Foundation. And finally, August 15th, the subject was the offshore wind development off of Aquidneck Island and Newport County. And those panelists included a deputy chief of the Division of Marine Fisheries from Rhode Island DEM, as well as Ironworks, an Iron Workers Union, Local 37. And within those panelists, there was robust discussion. There was a debate that was going on, and not all of the panelists were in agreement and were pro or for or against anything. This was a robust discussion. We did it. I think the Energies and Environments Commission did it in a very methodical way and put a lot of volunteer time in order to do this. I also understand too. Nope, I'm going to leave it there for right now.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, Councilor Aramlin.
I want to thank Councilor Carlin for amending this. As this resolution was presented in its original form, my vote on this would have been a nay. I do not think it is a good thing or appropriate thing for the city council to rebuking any of our city commissions, boards, unless they have violated city ordinances or laws or rules or been rude or disrespectful to constituents. I've dived into this and spoken to members of the commission to understand it better. And I don't think that's what happened here. However, private meetings, private conferences, private trade industry events, they are free to invite who they want and who they do not want. They're free to choose who speaks and who is on a panel and who is not on a panel. That is the privilege of private industry. When it comes to city government, we do need rules. We do need procedures. We do need some structure to our meetings. But I am a believer when anyone is left in a city government related meeting, discussion, workshop, whatever it is, feeling that they were not heard, that they were not allowed to speak, that they were not allowed to present their point of view. In those cases, and this is completely irrespective of the wind issue. Okay, this is a citizen participation concern for me. In those cases, I will always be happy to vote to allow additional discussion and points of view to be heard. I don't think the city council should be taking positions on things that we can't control or influence. And at this point, the wind is a state and federal issue. But when it comes to making residents and folks who want to participate in the process, when we leave behind some folks who don't feel that they've been heard, I don't cast any blame, by the way, on the EEC, not at all. But it is not a bad thing for us to invest more time to allow those voices to be heard. And further, when it comes to our commissions and committees and boards in general, I think many people don't realize how much of the work of the city is done by volunteers. You know, whether it's the EEC or the HTC or the zoning board or the planning board or countless other commissions, bike and pedestrian, I can name 5 more. These are people volunteering their time. And time is our most precious commodity left in this world, right? And none of us have enough of it. They're volunteering their time to make this city a better place. I will never vote on anything that rebukes any commission member for their work to the city, unless, as I said, they've violated the rules or broken our ordinances or have been disrespectful to constituents. I commend Councillor Carlin for changing the language substantially in this resolution to be away from one that could be interpreted as a rebuke or pointing a finger, and just simply saying, if it's a city conversation and someone is left feeling like they haven't been heard, they should be allowed to be heard. And so for that reason, I'll be supporting the amendment.
On the amendment, Madam Chair,
Yes.
please. Thank you very much. For over 2 years, I have tried to participate as a vibrant member of the Energy and Environment Commission, starting on day one, when I offered my research on offshore wind farms to my fellow commission members. I was turned down month after month after month, over and over and over again. I was dismissed. I find the inner workings of the commission to be far below any professional or productive standards. And I advise that immediate action be taken to correct these multiple and blatant failings. This is from my constituent who just yesterday told the council that she resigns from this commission for the very reasons that we're talking about here. Everybody deserves a right to speak. Shameful that she had to resign. I asked for support on this. I amended it so that I could get the votes. Please help me get the votes.
Councillor, I know we didn't want to read the entire thing. It is a short resolution. You have changed it dramatically. I think there is value to reading how it stands now.
I'll do that with the chair's permission.
Yes, go right ahead.
Whereas the City of Newport's Energy and Environment Commission recently held a wind farm forum on August 15th at Newport City Hall. And whereas at this forum, wind farm proponents were invited to offer their opinions about what they consider to be positive impacts of wind farm production and the resulting energy generation. Line 3 in the whereas, original resolution for anybody who's reading, struck. Line 4 continues. Whereas the City of Newport's Energy and Environment Commission is an entity created by and whose members are appointed by the Newport City Council. Now, therefore, be it resolved, first resolved struck in its entirety, that the City of Newport City Council requests the city administration arrange and conduct a public hearing for opponents of wind farm energy to have their fair share in as timely a manner as possible. So moved.
Wait, you didn't finish. You had semicolon. Doing so, the city administration and city council are asking for respect and dignity at public meetings.
Absolutely correct. I apologize. Thank you, Councilor Lima, for that great mention. This goes to all of our boards and commissions, and it was a suggestion made to me
City
by
council.
Council.
Just asking.
All set? Should I finish?
No, keep going.
Okay, thanks. Great point, Councilor Lima. Indeed, that language was added per the request of Councilor Rowley, and I support it. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Napolitano.
that was my question. Why is this in front of the city council? You know, I'm all for free speech. I'm all for the opponents and those that want to speak in favor of it. I think maybe the Energy and Environment Commission, in its effort to do something good, kind of overstepped their skis. They really did, because if we're going to task city administration with arranging a meeting and finding a place and a time, somehow that involves the city council. When we talked originally about this, and we were considering entering a lawsuit with preservation and all, and we decided not to, because it was way beyond what we could really control. We knew that the voices had to be from the public. I don't think this is something that Newport City Council should consider. If they want to have another event, certainly we could probably help them find a place. But I really do not believe at this point we should be involved with our staff, with our I just don't. If they want to have a meeting with the opponents and the proponents, I think that's fine. And I tried to watch that meeting from the other night because so many people were talking about it. And that's what I said earlier. There's so much civil discourtesy and unrest that it has gotten really, really unbearable for a lot of people. That's not who we are. And people should be allowed, if they have something to say, whether you agree with them or not, they should be allowed to say it. This is America. This is a democracy. And I don't even think this should be in front of us. I really don't.
Councilor Napolitano,
Yeah,
I just want-
Councilor Rowley.
I just want to disagree with that. I think the first part of what you said was city council shouldn't be bothered with this.
I didn't say that. I
This
said
isn't something
I-
we should be looking at or considering. And the second half of what you said was you believe in free speech.
Yes.
If it is a government venue, if it's a city government conversation, if it's a city government meeting, workshop, anything involved with the city of Newport, and there are people left behind who feel their voices haven't been heard and are requesting as constituents to be heard. This, to me, this is a constitutional issue. This is just fundamental. If somebody is leaving a government situation, government-run situation, and feels like their voice was not allowed to be heard,
But
it
why
it
was
is
it
our job.
government?
It is our job because the Environment and Energy Commission works for the city. And by the way, I want to thank them. So I want to thank them for the hard work they put in, the volunteer time they put in. They benefit the city. There are people who walked away from that experience unhappy, feeling unheard. It is our job to make sure people feel heard in this process of municipal democracy.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilor Lima.
I agree with Councilor Napolitano in terms of if others want to go ahead and make another workshop, and they can most certainly do it independently. I think that we've already exhausted our resources in terms of our government and doing this discussion. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't, people can't independently host meetings to continue on a discussion. But at this point, I'm satisfied with the results that we've produced. We've literally had open meetings on this and several. So I'm satisfied. I don't think that this is necessary.
Okay, further discussion? Yeah. Anyone from the public? Yeah. Yes, of course.
Fall out.
No, no, don't do that.
Why I got.
Name and address, please.
My name is Russell Milham. I live at 108 Champlain Place North, I think,
Mhm.
in Newport, Rhode Island. And I've been in a house here that I bought and was able to put 20% down.
Mhm.
You can't do that now.
Right.
That's the community that we've allowed to develop and what we're making noise about when people want to do something. But you all are not in it, the business of telling me how I, outside of this building, can deal with other people if I'm running an event. And the young lady on the end, I agree with her. And I think you picked up and you're agreeing. Because you want to push an agenda, don't put it on my back. That's what you're talking about doing, voting here, to come out and say, if a group is out in the community doing an event and some other group wants to piggyback in on them, if they made arrangements in advance, it happens. And it does happen in this community. It may not be the things you as an individual want, but I've seen it happen. And it isn't necessarily that I support a specific group. The little young man over here knows that I come from an interesting background. So don't vote on something that you want to establish as an agenda out there in the world. That's not your job here in the city council. And I don't think any of you can find it in any of the rules as being city council people. You're making it up as you're going on with this particular situation. I don't know if any of the people that other people who were about to stand up, I just got up because I was sitting there ticked off. So be careful on what you vote on, because you may be putting yourself in a position that you do not want to be. So think about it, please.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
think
Miller.
this isn't even an agenda that you should be talking about. This is not the city business. This is outside of, and if you want to go to court with people, that's the way to do it.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Anyone else from the public? Yeah, name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Katrina Hamilton Gewers. Thank you all for being here. Middletown, Rhode Island, and I'm also representing my 98-year-old father-in-law who is a like-minded, and he is in Newport, Rhode Island. His name is Bernard. I do appreciate that Mrs. Napolitano said that people were out over their skis. Regardless of what happened at the prior meetings that were put together by the Energy and Environmental Commission, you're so right. They really tried, and that's what we're all trying to do here. I want the best for Newport, Aquidneck Island. I want the best for the environment. I want it all. I mean, I'm sorry, but I do. And I think but the cat's already out of the bag. And what happened was that there was an educational series specifically on offshore wind development off of Aquidneck Island and Newport County on the 15th of August. Regardless of what happened in that meeting, it is what led to that meeting where the censorship began. There were groups that were offered a place on this, that were told to please submit names when they saw the people who were going to speak, and they recognized their voice would not be heard, knowing the views that the people who had already been chosen represented. I don't know if there at any point was a request for speakers. I don't know if at any point the guidelines for the type of speakers were made public, but I know that a group with which I am deeply involved, that is a 501c3 approved charity with complete transparency, no political alignments, but cares deeply about the environment and is fully backed by science, submitted an incredible group of people. We had PhDs, one who is specifically a founding member of the Energy Council of Rhode Island. We had a 30-year commercial fisherman and charter captain who's on the water all the time and has watched specifically with his own eyes things that have happened around Block Island. And those, excuse me, those turbines, we also offered up a PhD and an MD from Yale who did deep study on marine mollusks, and all of them were rejected. There was no opportunity for the voice. So if you want us to have a voice, give us one. We were cut out. This is called, and there are multiple cases, viewpoint discrimination. It's not that the subject matter is different. We agree with the subject matter. We want to talk about offshore wind. But when viewpoint discrimination
Just
occurs,
a few more
I
comments.
know when the ding, thank you so
Mhm.
much. It's when the government entity, which you are, and all your umbrella groups that plan this, when the government and its entities restrict speech based on a particularly disfavored form of content, this is discrimination under the First Amendment. I didn't appreciate some bullying that I heard here tonight about not voting. I don't know if you're going to vote or not, but what I think is Newport, Aquidneck Island, and everybody in this room, and everybody on this town, and everybody on this island and well beyond has the right to hear in the same type of organized public setting that there's so much out there that is not being discussed. And we're doing our best to get it out there, but we are being silenced by everybody, including your Energy and Environmental Commission, which is why you have people who are resigning. Please, let's come together to have a legitimate conversation where people can kindly offer up backed facts, not bullying, not things where people are silenced, and not having people in this audience tonight who disagree. And when a speaker walks away under their breath, says, "Shut up." That's not who we are. We are all better than that. Let's rise to the occasion.
Madam Chair? Yes,
Can I ask a
Yes.
question? I'm so sorry. Can I ask you a question? You had mentioned there was a PhD and an MD professional. Can I ask you a PhD in what?
She's actually here tonight.
Great.
And I'm not, hang on, with that, I would also answer, I'm not sure it even matters since all the other speakers lacked any of that type of situation on their own educational resume. So now we're peeling back, excuse me. I'm not sure that everybody's, let me repeat that in a better, sorry, I'm a little jumbled. People's resumes were likely all vetted beautifully. What I was trying to say is it was never made clear to the people who they were specifically looking for. So she is happy to stand up and speak on what her education was, the PhD was. I would also like to know if that was a value point in choosing the people who were on.
So you're not going to answer my question?
No, she will. She's right here.
Okay.
I am. I just don't.
Actually, so you said a lot. So I actually want to ask our chairs from the EEC to address some of the things that you were saying.
want the answer to your question.
Right.
Well, I see that you're probably prepared to give some more testimony, so I'll wait. I'll reserve my questions.
Hi, good evening. So
Please identify yourself for the record.
yes, I'm Emily Conklin. I'm the Vice Chair of the Energy and Environment Commission. I live at 3 Bull Street.
Avery Robertson, Chair of the Energy and Environment Commission. I'm at 261 Gibbs Ave.
So I think a lot of the points that we were prepared to address have been already looked at by some of the counselors. Counselor Lima discussed the agenda and the schedule of events. I think that we are volunteers, as was outlined, and we did our best to put together a series that would explore not just offshore wind, but also climate change and resilience topics that were under requests from the public, and then also that we have been thinking about as a commission for some time, and that are big issues for our community, for our municipality, for our island. And this was a public process that we discussed starting in our meeting in March, which Councilor Lima mentioned. And our meetings April through July were about this series. So we had a lot of open process in which we were able to discuss in all of as everything that we do is, listed ahead of time. We take minutes, everything is posted. And we intended to put together a session where we had balanced perspectives on all of these issues. It's impossible, I think, to host any event where every single viewpoint is represented and where, with all due respect to Councilor Romley, everyone leaves feeling that their questions have been sufficiently answered. I think that there's just too many questions on these topics. So our intention was to be educational and informative. We understand that some folks are very passionate about these topics, and also that some folks are dissatisfied with how we ran the events. I think this is a learning opportunity for us, and we as a commission have a lot that we can incorporate for future events. And we also, to Councilor Holder's point, do not have a position at this point to advise the council upon or to weigh in on in terms of city council policy, in terms of what Newport can do in terms of standing. So, we have spent, I think, Avery, this was one of Avery's points, that we have spent a large chunk of this year talking about this topic and trying to offer different ways for engagement. And we're ready to move into other more actionable concepts and topics for the city of Newport, that the city of Newport actually needs our advisement and support and, marketing on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. Do you have any comment, Avery?
I'd just like to add that, as Emily already said, it's impossible sometimes. Like you heard that our first event had 100 people. If 100 people have questions, we can't stay there for all night. And so we have hosted over the course of this year, like 7 hours worth of events around this subject because we saw the public had interest in it. And I think that we did do, to the best of our ability, hosting events that we valued multiple viewpoints. We actually did have a commercial fisherman on our second panel. And that was a panel that was even covered by Newport this week, where the title of it on the front page said uncertainty. Fishermen and scientists agree on uncertainty of offshore wind. So I think that even in press coverage, it was expressed that there was a lot of discussion. And of course, when there's a topic that there are uncertainties, there's going to be more questions about it. So we could probably host events like once a month about this subject because of how much interest there is in it. But I think we do as a commission, we have many more pressing subjects. Like we even mentioned the Ollie Pond, doing a workshop on that. That's the thing that's of interest to us, or the bond. So we're energy environment broadly.
Thank you very, thank you.
Madam
so
Chair,
much for that.
may I please?
Yes.
I hesitate to interrupt any speakers from coming forward, but I want to answer the question that Councilor Lima asked earlier as to the educational background of one who is here tonight. Thank you. And who attempted to be a part of the larger discussion. She graduated from Stanford University, and then spent 9 years at Yale University, earning a joint MD and PhD degree.
In
Her
what?
PhD, may I continue? Thank you. Her PhD degree was in basic neuroscience. Her dissertation focused on the sea slug, Aplysia californica, if I have pronounced that correct. During her medical training, she spent a year as an intern at Mass General Hospital in medicine, and she completed her adult psychiatry residency at Harvard's McLean Hospital. By the way, Harvard University maintains for her a position on the research faculty and has done so for 30 years. She's won a number of awards on many topics, including biologic topics and many others. She also spent time at the University College of London as a visiting scholar. I wonder if that is credentialed enough for my colleagues. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, again, it's just a simple question. Well, one, I wanted to ask the Energies and Environments Commission about, so the question that was posed earlier, how did you vet these panelists?
Thank you for that question. So this was a panel that, or sorry, this was a series that we planned in collaboration with some state agencies. And so that was based on outreach from, contacts that were relevant, and then through connections at universities, and then in connection with the sectors, the different sectors that we wanted to explore. So what we did was we did outreach based on those topics, and then based on whatever angle we were looking at. So for example, the fisheries panel, we wanted someone to address the science, someone to look at the regulation side. So that was where NOAA came in, someone who's on the water, the fisheries came in that way. And then there were also a lot of practical applications of who was available from that point. And again, I will just say there's a lot of lessons that we learned from this. Like, we didn't put out a general call. We wanted to put this forth in a way that was reasonable for the commission. And we didn't, we didn't think that this should be like a general search as though we would for a job. And so we did the best we could with the resources that we had.
Thank
Madam
you.
Vice Chair.
Madam Chair.
We have a couple more people who have comments. Would you like to?
Madam
Yes.
Chair, just one comment. I just want to make sure we don't veer too far off of what this resolution
I
is.
totally agree with you.
And that's what's starting to
Yes,
happen. So
yes. We have a couple, yes, come on up. Identify yourself, please, for the record.
Yes, it's Lisa Quattrocki Knight and
And your address?
82A Little Compton, Rhode Island.
Mhm.
So I just want to clear up, well, thank you for letting me talk. I really appreciate it. And I just want to clear up a little bit about the history of what happened that Emily failed to acknowledge. One thing also I wanted to mention about the panelists that she kept mentioning, the fisheries. He happens to be on the payroll for Orsted. He is the fishery liaison for offshore wind. So I don't think he actually represents a real unbiased opinion. But the panel that I tried to get on was the last one, the one on offshore wind. And Emily actually initiated a email exchange with me at the beginning of July, which I responded to saying I was delighted that she was doing this and we would love to help out. My organization is called Green Oceans. It's a nonprofit, as Katie mentioned, and we are a research and educational organization. We're not a political organization, and we're bipartisan, we're nonprofit. We only accept money from our members, which are all grassroots members. So we have no political agenda here. We're trying to educate the public, and we do our own research as well. So when I learned about the offshore wind discussion, I was delighted. I offered to be part of the panel. Emily said that we could not be part of the first two panels, but that there was a possibility we could be part of the third panel. And would I propose three panelists, or would I propose a panelist? So I gave her three options. One was myself. And since she had Nick Horton, who had done the campaign for offshore wind, I thought that my perspective as someone who's done a lot of research on the science behind offshore wind, that I could provide an alternative perspective. They also had someone from DEM who's a graduate student in fisheries management. So I offered Rob Roush, who is a 30-year plus fisherman. And then they had the local iron workers representative. And so I offered up Martin, who is a founding member of the Energy Council for Rhode Island. He also founded a large company that had employs over 300 people in Rhode Island. And since these wind farms are promising a lot of employment, but actually haven't delivered, I think they've only hired 50 part-time. Revolution Wind has only hired.
Just a couple more comments, please.
Okay. Well, anyway, we did this back in July, and then I heard only about 10 days before the meeting that she was accepting none of my potential panelists. And she accused me of not having scientific integrity. And that's why she didn't want to have any of my prospective candidates.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I really don't want to disparage anyone here on the council.
No,
please.
I
But
understand that.
thank you. I mean, we respect our
No, but
volunteers and
I apologize. I respect that as well. I think the problem is whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech.
okay,
And
thank
I
you.
would
Thank you.
also add, he who stifles free discussion secretly doubts what he or she professes to believe is really true.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy Machado, Chelberta Gap, Newport, Rhode Island. I'm here as a friend of Emily. I'm here to kind of stand up for her a little bit. And also as someone who attended the second meeting, I don't really have an opinion either way on wind, no wind. And I felt the panel was quite well balanced. In fact, it felt more anti-wind with the fisheries guys. And maybe that was part of like their personalities and they were just a bit more vocal. But I can't stand up here and listen to residents from people who don't live in Newport. Dave, you're always asking people, where do you live? Do you live here? Do you vote here? This is Newport City Council. This lady should go to Middletown and ask them to have some commissions. You live in Little Compton. There's nothing stopping Little Compton from doing that. It's not our responsibility in Newport to host the ideas of everyone in this place. I, as a resident of Newport, I didn't even have a moment to ask a question during the second meeting because this lady from Middletown, when she stood up, she basically just commandeered the microphone and said, I can stand up here and talk all day. And she had to basically be asked to leave the microphone. And then another lady came up from Westport. I don't know what her name is. She looks like Blythe Danner, but she was the one that was involved in the previous incident. And like, she just kind of commandeered. So it is ridiculous for these folks saying their voices aren't being heard. Your voices were heard. You guys took over the microphone and made it impossible for Newport residents to ask their questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Name and address, please.
Name is Thomas Palmer,
Mhm.
20 Warner Street in Newport. And I want to speak about the resolution. I'm asking you to vote. I'm asking the councilors to vote against the resolution for a number of reasons. First of all, very small one, there's a typo in the first paragraph. So maybe I should say it's written. But it is, so I'm asking you to vote against Councilor Carlin's resolution regarding his request that the NEEC host a public meeting, quote, at which the opponents of wind farms will be permitted their turn to speak. I am not against further public meetings that address the impact of climate change, resiliency efforts, or alternative energy sources, including but not limited to offshore wind. I do object to passing the resolution as written for the following reasons. In the first paragraph, Councilor Carlin refers to a, quote, wind farm forum. And then the correct title, which Councilor Lima has already given us, was a 3-panel event, was a summer education series, climate change and resilience of Quintic Island. And I'm assuming that the wind farm forum Councilor Carlin is referring to was the third and final panel. Is that correct? The one that was titled Offshore Wind Development off of Quintic Island and Newport County. Is that, or were you referring to all of them?
I appreciate you being here. It's unusual for me to answer questions because
So-
it prolongs, but I will, because you deserve the respect of an answer. Sorry about the typo. Nuances. I think everybody understands what I'm talking about.
And I should say, I attended all 3 of the summer series, one as well as the Mark presentation. More importantly, the second paragraph is inaccurate as to the intent of the NEEC and the education series. From what I gathered at a number of NEC meetings, and the agendas and minutes of those are all online, it was not the commission's intent to invite, quote, quoting Councilor Carlin, wind farm proponents, or to highlight the, quote, positive impacts of offshore wind, but to have as many affected communities and organizations speak about the impacts of climate change. The intent was to get timely, factual, scientific information to the community. The minutes of the March 20th meeting at Innovate Newport, which featured a presentation by URI Graduate School of Oceanography Professor Emerita Barbara Sullivan Watts, concludes with a statement, desire for the unbiased information to the community to understand the project's impact. Try and finish up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Summer education series was the NEEC's responses. So they've said to that interest by the public. So as I said, I went to all 3 of the meetings and I found them interesting, informative, and balanced. Skip that time. For the most part, the panelists outlined clearly how the organizations they represented were being affected by and were responding to climate change. For instance, Topher Hamblett from Save the Bay just talked about sea level rise and wetlands. The August 8th panel, the effect of climate change and offshore wind on fisheries and ecosystems, was interesting for the very agnostic tone of 3 of the 4 panelists, including the opinion of one panelist that climate change, as understood to be human driven, was still open to question.
Just a couple more minutes.
Only the 3rd panel was there.
A couple more seconds.
Responsibly built offshore wind in the person of Nick Horton, who has a background in marine ecology. The rest of the panelists, whatever their personal beliefs, kept the facts in front of them. So neither the NEEC nor the city of Newport should sponsor a public meeting at which, quote, the opponents of wind farms would be permitted their turn to exercise their voices in such a public capacity. Nor should they sponsor a meeting devoted to proponents of offshore wind. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next. Name and
Good
address.
evening, Benjamin Riggs. I've lived here in Newport for 24 years on Harrington Street. For the last 20 years, I've been president of the Circle of Scholars of Salve Regina, as well as the one at Newport Circle of Scholars at the King House. and have conducted or facilitated around 300 classes over that time, where the first hour is a professor from the War College, the second hour is a discussion of current events and what we ought to do about our foreign policy. Now, if that was ever a place to have some acrimony and problems, that would be it. In that 20 years, we did not once, I don't care, we said, you could say anything you want, no matter how outrageous, you want to bomb this country, you want to do this, you want to do that. Not one word of anger. Nobody stormed out of the room. Nobody shut off anybody from giving their opinion. Not once, 300 classes. That ain't what happened here. What happened here, I think, to answer Councilor Napolitano's question about why are we talking about this in front of the city council, is the city council created an organization to accomplish a task, which happens to be a damn big task. It's the most money and biggest risk ever being taken in this world today. And what happened was we had a court convened where the prosecution was there, but the defense was not. That's called a kangaroo court. And that's the way it was actually operated. That's the issue, not wind per se or technical solutions. It's that the other side was never once heard. And this is a country where we don't behave that way. We're not a banana republic.
How many of the forums did you attend?
Pardon?
How many of the forums did you attend?
I didn't come to these forums.
Oh,
I am a member of the Energy Council of Rhode Island, and I have been to many, many forums and studied this subject for over 20 years. And I am very familiar with it. I'm an aeronautical engineer. I've had experience with a lot of these issues here, there, and everywhere, and watch what has happened over the years. And this is a subject that was not covered at this energy forum at all. And that's the problem. And to conclude my argument, that's why we're here in front of this group. And there is, it's futile for people to try to talk facts and analysis to a group of people who enjoy a sense of moral superiority in their ignorance, and they don't want to listen. And that's what happened here, and that's why the buck stops here.
thank you, Mr. Riggs. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, we have another objection. Yes, please.
do you need to attend these forums or any forum in order to have an opinion on fairness?
Go ahead.
Good evening.
Name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Nick Horton. My address is 45 Plainfield Street in Providence. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name has been mentioned several times, so I hope it feels like my perspective is pertinent. I also wanted to first commend all of you for being here for so long at this council meeting. It's amazing to see the
Oh,
community.
this is nothing.
Good community engagement here in Newport. I want to make a few quick points. First, sorry, just to introduce myself. I have a degree in intertidal ecology from Brown University, and I'm an organizer of climate action in Rhode Island. The first panel, just to be clear, as it was mentioned, was, I think, largely a wind skeptic panel. I counted 35 minutes of perspectives which were opposed to wind versus 7 minutes in support. It's just sort of how things played out based on who ended up there and the perspectives and personalities. On the third panel, the Newport Preservation Society was invited as the wind skeptic. I believe, I don't want to speak for the commission, but that their hope was up until the end, they were in conversation, hoping that they would agree to attend, and they decided that they did not want to attend. So there was a real effort to have a wind skeptic on that third panel. I think that this resolution is being framed as this was a one-sided panel and there needs to be more discussion. I think a more accurate framing is this was a balanced process, and does Green Oceans deserve their own forum? I think that's a more accurate description of the resolution that's being proposed. And I just want to say that Green Oceans is not being denied a voice. Rather, they have the most amplified voice. According to their website, they have a budget of $400,000, hoping to raise $1 million this year. They have paid professional videographers in the corner here, like he was last time. The plan is to edit the meeting today and to pay PR to get it out there. Once again, you will see that the perspectives of people who are skeptical or make reasonable arguments in opposition to them will not be featured in the work that they will amplify throughout the community. Rather, only their perspectives. This is the same thing they do with all issues as they promote an inaccurate and sensationalized viewpoint.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Madam
I
Chair,
think-
question for the
We,
witness. Thank you, Nick, for being here tonight. When was who was invited from or who did the invitation for the Preservation Society to participate go to? And secondly, when was the Preservation Society of Newport invited to attend?
I think I would leave that to them to answer because that was them.
thank you. After this, we're going to vote.
Please do.
There are more folks in the audience.
Oh, okay, okay. And so-
I can find the dates for you for which I reached out, but I did ultimately interact directly with Judy Cox a few weeks, or maybe I think 1 week before the panel, at which she declined, but there were many, many emails ahead of that to members of the board of the Preservation Society, and I called them directly and received no response.
It's my understanding that the Preservation Society was not invited until what I would call the last minute, certainly within a 72-hour timeframe. And the public should also know that the Preservation Society of Newport County is in the middle of the busiest. You don't ask Santa Claus to appear at a forum on Christmas Eve.
I sent them an email in June and continued to email them until the week before the forum in August.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If anyone has anything different to say, please, well, first, Beth, why don't you come up and then we'll have you. Is that okay? Have a seat and then let Beth come up. Sorry. Name and address for the record.
Beth Miller, 108 Champlain Place North. Obviously, I did not plan to speak tonight, stating support. And I don't think by what I'm wearing, there's much doubt of where I stand. I just would like to say I was one of the founding members of the Energy and Environment Commission. I'm very proud of the work they've done, and I am exceedingly proud of the work they continue to do. I was not able to program that they did, but I am very proud of the fact that they did it. And it's a very controversial topic. I have attended several hearings on the island. I am very familiar with a group that did not name itself, but that comes to every single forum and is very loudly heard. It has this much truth, a lot of embroidery, and no doubt of where they stand. People presenting facts do their best, but they do get kind of overwhelmed. I heard a comment from the council, a council member of these wind farms littering the coast. I really take offense at that. These are producing clean energy that are going to be supporting thousands of homes. That's not what you can say about the rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. I think those are littering the coast. So please keep a perspective on what we are facing in the future and what we need to do as quickly as possible to fight that and keep it from happening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, come on. You can come up. Name and address, please.
My name is Elise McCaffrey. I live at 34 Webster Street in Newport, and thank you for allowing me to briefly address a couple of things that I don't think have brought up so far. So the first thing I wanted to say is that the standard here underlying this resolution seems to be that certain individuals allege they felt left out from either the inclusion on the commission, choosing the speakers, or speaking during these events. I feel like that's a very squishy standard. I'm not really sure what that means, but I could give an example that in the 2 meetings I attended, I could say I felt left out because I wasn't able to answer the question that I wanted to. And I also was very frustrated by the fact that certain attendees totally disregarded the decorum and the procedures for the meeting by using the microphone to not ask the question, but to give platform, like to just try to educate everybody else instead of asking the question. And that's the reason why I didn't go to the 3rd meeting, is because I knew it was going to be just a discussion that's totally out of control. So I am asking the council to not approve this resolution, to deny it. And I just wanted to quickly say that there's been some commentary about constitutional issues or free speech issues. And I hope that if that is something that any of you are concerned about, that you will speak with a lawyer about it, ask the city solicitor, or get an informed opinion, because these are not constitutional issues and there's no free speech issue that's been raised here. And the same goes for whatever vague allegations about somebody not being included on the committee or being asked to leave, or certain speakers not being asked to participate. Councilman Aramli himself said that he didn't see that any violations or unlawful conduct had occurred. It's this squishy thing of I felt left out, I didn't feel included. And I am a Newporter. I strongly believe that in certain forum, participation is open to people from whatever walk of life, whatever background, wherever they live. This is a Newport City Council meeting. I hope that the comments that you take into account are of your constituents and the people that live in Newport. And lastly, I just want to address this other thing that's been sort of thrown around, that Green Oceans is a grassroots group. I would love to see documentation about that. The little bit of research I've done, it's all people who live in Little Compton, and they share residences out of state as well. They don't seem to include scientists or people who work in the field. And I would love to see some of the financial records about what exactly makes them grassroots and where their funding is coming from, particularly when it's taking up city council time. And there seems to be this feeling that we are somehow breaking the law by not including certain people in forums. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have 2 more. Okay, we have 4 more. Okay, do you have something different to say? Okay,
Hi, I'm Dave Donatelli from 33 Commonwealth Avenue in Newport, and I have 2 quick comments. First, some of the council members were saying that they don't think they should be involved because it is a federal and state issue, which I do understand it is a federal and state issue. But this is going to have a massive impact on our city. Whether you're for or against, we're going to live with this for decades. And, you are our representatives, and you do have influence at the state level, maybe not at the federal level, but at least at the state level. So I think it's very important that you do take a stance on this, and that we do make this a public process. Again, I'm not commenting one way or the other if you're for it or against it, but I think it is something that is worthy of your time. Because if you look at the impacts that we talked about tonight, you're talking about borrowing about what is the equivalent of a year's tax revenue for this. That's a big issue in the city. Resiliency is a big issue in the city. The school's a big issue in the city. And certainly the windmills, which you're going to see from everywhere and be an impact here for decades, are the big issues. So to say it's not your job, I get from a statutory perspective, it's not. It is very much your job to understand what the city's stance is. So I think it's a good use of your time because, again, it's a big impact issue. Second quick thing I'd add is I'm not here to discuss the school one way or the other, but I will say on the bond issue, when you exceed the proposed budget by 50%, that does not help your credibility when you come back to the citizens and say, hey, give me another $95 million. It's all going to be great. That does not fly in the private sector. It should not fly in the public sector. So my understanding of the school, and I'm not here to argue about it one way or the other, is we're accountable for all the overrun. So when you overrun by 50%, citizens of this city are paying for that dearly. So to then come back for more money, it's not easy to get more people to have faith in whatever the next project is. Those are my
thank you very much. Thank you. Next, I think you're next. How many more do we have to speak? We have one more? One more. Okay, one more. That's it. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lee Riggs. I lived in Newport for 23 years and been involved in many activities.
Oh, could you give me your address, please?
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
15 Harrington Street in Newport.
Okay, thank you.
I have just one question or comment. I was not at any of these forums, but the most recent one got into the news, and so that's how I heard about it, and nobody's really mentioned this tonight, but I think it's a very important thing. And it's really has more to do with, I'm not even talking about the issue, just about freedom of speech. And I don't even know I just what I've read and a video that was made with it. And I think that the public needs to know, if they don't already know, that a woman was speaking on the side of not having windmills, and a man came up to her and assaulted her, was then called, the police were called in, and, you know, she was assaulted, the police called in, and nobody came out to defend the senior elderly woman, I believe she was. And I, having no size, nothing to do with anything, just as an onlooker, looking at this, I'm saying, where's our democracy? Where's our freedom of speech? What's going on here? And there was some legal matters, you know, that the commissioner, whoever it is held responsible for, like assault of an elderly, which is an offense. So I can't go into detail. I just thought this was very important to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that person has been indicted, so thank you. Okay, one more, please. Thank you. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Patricia Bilden, 155 Ocean Avenue, and I wanted to address a couple of issues. And one was that, well, thank you very much for supporting this resolution, and I hope it does pass tonight, because I think it's important that we get a diversity of opinion or a diversity of thought at all of these Newport City-sponsored events. And I believe at the offshore wind event, the number 3, there was a lack of diversity of opinion. And I think that rather than saying that we want to have proponents of wind or opponents of wind, I think what we want to have is diversity of thought and both opportunities for both sides to have their say. On the topic of people from not being from Newport, not having a voice, you know, no, that's not true, because that should not be the case. This educational series was climate change and resilience on Aquidneck Island. And the last one, the number 3, was offshore wind development off of Aquidneck Island in Newport County. It sounds to me like the commission wanted to have the input of Newport County and Aquidneck Island. And if you're going to limit it to just people in Newport, then this should have said it. And you're really minimizing a lot of other people who maybe they don't even live in Newport, but they work here. In fact, the teacher who talked at the very beginning of the council meeting lives in Portsmouth, but she works in Newport. So she has a connection to Newport as much as someone who lives here, I could argue. And I would say that I felt like there was disparaging comments made about Green Oceans and wanting to see the donor list or the financial statements. And again, I don't think that that's the purpose of tonight. If you're looking for diversity of opinion and that Green Oceans is a recognized 501c3 and has people who care very much about the ocean, they should have the right to be on the council or on the committee as much as people who come from, I don't know who the other speakers were, but I suspect they were either from Providence or Cranston or Pawtucket. And so saying that someone who was on the council or who wanted to talk to the committee wasn't from Newport, again, disregards the importance of their point of view. And if they, you know, if you're only going to have people from Newport talk on these things, then okay, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case. So I don't think there should be disparaging comments made about the participants. You should look to see what they are bringing to the committee, not what negative things you can think about to say to them.
Okay,
So
thank you. Thank you. All right. We are gonna vote. I think we've taken
Madam
enough
Chair, we
time
have
for
someone in the
this.
front who would like to speak. We have others who would like to speak. Everybody.
We have to
Madam Chair,
stop
the
this.
very nature of this resolution
I
is that we not
understand.
shut off speech. There is everybody in the
Miss-
audience here for a
Mr.
reason.
Carlin,
We need
if
to let-
someone has something.
I refuse to stop talking until you give everybody, pro or con, an opportunity to
Everyone is
speak.
going to have an opportunity to speak. All I'm saying is that if you have something different to say, please present it. We can't be hearing the same thing over and over and over again. So give us something different, please.
I have something to say. I was the former chair of the Environmental Commission. My name is Lola Herrera. I live in 59 Bedlow Avenue and applaud the initiative that she did because I think the commission need to be, first of all, it need to be a strategic plan for each commission and what can do and what cannot do. I think the commission took a risk having this panel and this topic is super very
Controversial.
very controversial. Thank you. But I applaud the initiative of the commission trying to educate our citizens about a topic that is there. That is the important thing for me, and that is new here because we are talking about curriculums of people and to be or not to be talking, and that is not the thing. The thing is educate the population about something, and I applaud the commission for doing that because when I was the former chair, it was for me very difficult to educate the councillors about initiatives that were really, really positive for the city. And at the end, some of the initiatives were in the city, like to have renewable energy in the grid. So I applaud the commission for this. That is my
Thank you very much. We have one last speaker. Go ahead. Come on up.
Jed Hancock Brainerd, 15 Dresser Street. I just want to say I was at all 3 meetings. I sent an email out to you all. I would encourage anyone who did not or was not at the meeting to watch them and decide yourself whether or not there was a diversity of opinion. My opinion, having seen them all, a large amount of time was occupied by the folks who are now requesting more time. I'm going to cut myself off to not take up more time. And I would encourage everyone to know that that's what's going to happen. It's just going to be more. It wasn't a hearing. It was a public educational series. And I think it did that job. And I do think it was balanced as someone who's watched it and grew up here and loves the ocean. I don't think it was one-sided at all. So I just wanted to.
Thank you very much for that. Okay. Did you already speak?
Hi, Caroline Richards, 6 Finney Street. I had no intentions of speaking. I'm a local realtor, so I try not to get too opinionated one way or the other. I deal in reality of how my business is affected. And this is not a wind farm debate. But when you talk about not wanting to get involved in this issue as a city council, it'll absolutely affect the values of our homes. I see clients not wanting to buy here because of what they're seeing. So this isn't an opinion, this is reality. There was a gentleman on Commonwealth who talked about repercussions, whether you agree with the issue or not. I'm already in the repercussions because I deal with it every day. So I would love to see our city get more involved in this. This is absolutely something we will look back on history in very strong opinionated ways. Again, not to give an opinion, this is not good for realtors to speak one way or the other. I'm talking about my reality of things that I'm already seeing affecting our city and our home values. Some of you may like to look at wind turbines, a lot of people don't want to.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are now ready to. Do you have something different to say?
Olivia Nagel, 553 Bellevue Avenue. I have been to some of the commission meetings And I have found them to be extremely professional, very calm, very relaxed, very inviting, and very straightforward. I did not find any agenda. I found people interested in educating the community. There is something I wish to say to the council, which I will send to you in a letter, but that will be a separate issue regarding the person who resigned. So I just wanted to say, I think the city council should have confidence in the Energy Commission. And I think that Angela, Councilor Lima, you are absolutely right about your approach and your view of the whole situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're ready to vote.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, roll call vote, please.
Madam Chair, I think as we're about to vote, this is a controversial topic. Councilors should be offered an opportunity to explain the basis for their votes as we're about to go.
That's-
I would be very brief. I'll be very brief.
Please.
And in this regard, I want to speak directly to the chair and vice chair of the Environmental Energy Commission. First, thank you. Thank you for the volunteer work that you do for the city. Thank you for the time that you give up out of your personal life to make Newport a better place. I can't stress enough how important our boards and commissions are. I spent time talking with the vice chair, spent time investigating these sort of allegations. I see nothing, absolutely nothing nefarious or wrong that was done by the Environment and Energy Commission. I see good intentions, and frankly, it is an unfortunate element of polarizing issues that, with all good intention, you can wind up with the toast falling butter side down. And I think in this case, this is a polarizing topic. I want the two of you to know, as a counselor, you have my personal support, and you do not deserve to be dragged into city council at 9:30 at night to be answering questions about your volunteer time. With that, to me, this is not a discussion about pro or anti-wind. Nothing to do with that. It is simply, I will always vote and encourage diversity of opinions and the ability for people to be heard. And so, that is why I'm supporting the revised resolution that Councilor Carmen put forth, not to address any agenda about whether wind is a good or bad thing for the city of Newport. I have my personal opinion, but simply that diversity of opinion should be always encouraged in municipal democratic processes, and I will always vote in favor of people being heard. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
thank you to both sides of the issue for being here, and I apologize for prolonging this meeting.
Mm.
If there are no other council comments, I would ask for a roll call vote on this, please, from the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. We're ready to vote.
We're going to vote on the amendment.
Just for clarification purposes, what are we voting on?
Can you restate your motion, please?
Can the clerk read it back? I can't remember it, to be quite frank. I offered an oral amendment. I deleted line 3, or I should say, well, I'll just let Laura read it. If you want the entire thing read again.
No, thank you. I'm sorry. Your amendment, you read everything. It was to remove, completely strike the third whereas, strike the first resolve, and for the last resolve, which now becomes the only one, you're keeping the existing language and you're adding semicolon. Doing so, the city administration and the city council are asking for respect and dignity at all city public meetings.
Sounds perfect to me.
Okay, all right. Then we'll do a roll call vote.
Councilor Lima?
This is on the amendment, correct?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm fading. Yeah. This is just the amendment.
This is
not
just,
the-
this is just the amendment.
Yeah, no, nay.
Counselor Romley,
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay. Okay, so that's it, right?
The resolution as a whole now.
Now the resolution as amended, right?
No, this is the original resolution now, because
But we just did an amendment, right?
we did. to
But it
vote.
would fail, so now we go to the original amendment.
Yes.
Okay,
the
the original one, okay, thank you, sorry. Roll call.
Well, just a minute now. I'm the sponsor of the original resolution. I took advice from council and I amended it to make it a nicer resolution. You want to go back to the bad resolution that you all thought? There's no need to vote for the original resolution because we just showed how this council feels by a 4-2 vote against the amended resolution. I don't believe there's really a need to vote on the original resolution. If you'd like to do so, I'll keep it on the table. If not, I'll pull it. We all know how everybody feels. Your choice, Madam Chair.
Which do you think we should do?
No.
Let's just vote on it as a council.
Oh.
We'll do the roll call.
Counselor Lima,
Nay.
Counselor Romley,
As I mentioned at the start, on the original resolution, I would be a nay.
Nay.
Yay.
Nay.
Nay.
motion.
Okay, that is, it's rejected. 6-1. All right, next we are on to, oh, I'm sorry, 5-1. Yes, it's getting late. Thank you. Counselor Carlin, would you like to discuss the traffic on Dixon Street and that we're going to continue?
I'll yield to Councilor Napolitano.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to continue this till our meeting of September 11th. And in the interim, have staff give us recommendations to the request.
Second. Discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh. I'm sorry? No, we voted to continue it. We're continuing it for 2 weeks so we can get a report from the city. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. Ordinances amending chapter 17.08 entitled Definitions, second reading. Nick, do you want to come on up and help us out here?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Nick Armour, zoning officer. These next 3 are just second readings of amendments that we put forward to you before. There was actually no discussion on them. They're simple, quick fixes. Just back to, I believe the definitions that we changed were around the amount of people that could live in a single dwelling being 5, and a piece around I believe it was guest facilities on that. I don't have the language right in front of me.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve, motion to amend chapter 17.08 entitled Definitions, second reading.
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to amend chapter 17.100 entitled Development Standards, second reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? No? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to amend chapter 17.110 entitled Unified Development Review. This is a second reading as well.
Second.
Questions or discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
And motion to add a new chapter 17.79 entitled Accessory Dwelling Unit. This is a second reading. Discussion?
Second.
Okay, okay, we have does the council want to discuss first, anything? Okay, Ms. Stevenson, would you like to come up? Name and address for the record, please.
Linda Stevenson, Dixon Street. I am so sorry to keep you guys here so late. I do have a little bit of an issue with this, and I have already peppered Nick with questions prior to the meeting. So, jump in, Nick, if I've got something wrong. I was fine with the ADU, 20,000 square foot lot, et cetera. And then it all went to, except if there's a existing structure on the property, then it can be converted to an ADU. I'm trying to keep in my head, the intent of this is to have more housing. And I've heard tonight what we want is workforce housing. Okay, so I checked with Nick, and it's my understanding if somebody in my neighborhood, which there are no 20,000 square foot lots in my neighborhood, has a garage, say, that could be converted into a 2-bedroom unit without going through zoning as a matter of right. It could also be 2-story, and you have the option of requiring an additional parking space. But so far at the minute, the city has recommended you not do that. That's where my problem is. I'm going to show you a picture of my backyard. If you can see where the circles are here, this right now is a garage behind my neighbor, which is already be using illegally as an accessory dwelling unit, has been for years. This right here is another garage. This behind my shed is another garage. Now imagine if all of those become 2-story buildings without additional parking. And let me tell you, every garage I just pointed out there is a house that's rentals. Specifically, Salve rentals in the winter. This garage here belongs to a house that has 6 bedrooms. That's 6 cars in my neighborhood during Salve season, okay? This one also Salve rentals, it's a multi-unit house, okay? So I am concerned that you're considering all of this in what's already a very dense neighborhood being added to without any additional parking, which exacerbates the situation for my neighborhood. It's a quality of life issue, not to mention now I've got big structures here all around me, as well as the parking. So I just am not sure. I think that's in the best interest of my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick, what do you think about that? I mean, when I read that about the, just not having to have more parking, I didn't really understand it either. And could you just clear that up, and should we amend that?
So happy to clarify a couple things on this. Ms. Stevenson is correct that any accessory structure that is legally established on the property could be converted to an ADU under the state ordinance. That's whether we pass an ordinance or not.
And that's like a shed or?
Yes, it does have to meet minimum building code standards. And there
Okay.
are minimum building code standards for the size of a dwelling per occupant of a dwelling. And so there is a review that would happen as part of a building permit. All of these would have to go through a building permit review.
Mhm.
That review is also including a zoning officer review. So
Mhm.
this is not something that will just fly under the radar. And we'd love to know if there are illegal units out there because we can enforce that. As far as parking is concerned, as we put forward in our draft ordinance, we are allowed to require parking per the state law. Our recommendation as the planning staff and the planning board agreed was not to require additional parking for the ADUs for a number of purposes. One being that it promotes the use of other alternative forms of transportation, biking, bus, walking. These are meant to be smaller units that are hopefully for workforce housing for people that live and work in our community, who wouldn't necessarily need to have a car on their property. We also offered a slightly alternative approach that the state didn't contemplate, which is if someone were to convert a garage that is serving as the required parking for their site, they would have to replace that parking on their property. If they cannot replace that parking on the property, they would have to go in front of the zoning board and get relief
Mhm.
for a variance. There is an argument to be made that if an ADU is created within that required garage space, they are creating the hardship that they are now asking for relief from. And under the zoning code, there's a good argument to be made that that should be grounds for denial. So there is a mechanism that would both review that situation and likely lead to a denial. Our worry with adding parking on for an ADU is that on properties that cannot provide that parking, they will be able to ask for a variance for that one space or two spaces for the ADU. And there is an argument for a hardship that is not self-created in that situation. Adding the dwelling is not considered to be a self-created hardship. It's really if they were to eliminate the parking out of their property and then ask for a variance, that there is a self-created hardship. So our worry is that if there is parking required, it will stymie the development of ADUs where they can exist, and or it will to an increase in parking variance applications to the zoning board, leading to delays in the creation of ADUs, but also delays to applicants of other projects that are going in front of the zoning board that have to deal with the ongoing backlog on an agenda. So that is our reasoning behind requiring parking. But again, it is up to the city council, and in the state law, you can require no parking, one space per unit, but no more than one space per bedroom of an ADU. I just want to also address one other concern that Ms. Stevenson brought up, which is about the creation of a second story on top of an ADU. We have recently passed an ordinance regarding the height limit of an accessory structure, depending on where that structure is located on a property. And that leads to setback allowances and requirements for accessory structures. If those accessory structures are where I suspect they are, which is in a required setback right now, they're a non-conforming structure, and the expansion up will trigger its own variance that will have to go in front of the zoning board to be approved. So there is, again, a mechanism to review that, review the impacts of a second story expansion of an ADU on those types of properties.
I appreciate the idea of if people would bike or walk and, you know, that, but the reality is that everybody has a car. And I mean, you know, maybe in 10, 20 years, that would be the case. I don't know. I'm not really comfortable now that, you know, we're on a second reading for this. I don't know if I'm comfortable without looking at that a little bit more. So I don't know how.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have said right along, parking is probably, it's up there with housing. Parking, and particularly in the third ward. I mean, it's almost non-existent. I'm not comfortable with that. And I've asked right along, if we're given the right or the ability to require a parking space, I think we should for that unit that they want to add. Also, I want you to clarify for the public, when an ADU is no longer used, needed for a family member or whatever, it's in a residential area. Does that qualify for an Airbnb or?
Absolutely not. It never will qualify for an Airbnb.
Thank you.
And just to clarify again, there is an allowance in the state code and in this ordinance that for the creation of an accessory dwelling unit for a disabled family member as a reasonable accommodation. That has existed prior to this code being passed by the state, and it is continued. They just added the other ways to create ADUs. That ADU for a disabled family member has to be created on an owner-occupied property. So that property must be owner-occupied before they can create the ADU for their disabled family. The other forms, which is the conversion of a structure on a sub 20,000 square foot property or a new construction on 20,000 square foot, that does not have to be an owner-occupied property in order to allow an ADU. The state also says that we cannot, after the transfer of a property, require the dismantling or disabling of an ADU. It does run with the property unless a property owner chose to remove it on their own. So we don't have any ability to remove them after the fact.
But we do have the ability to add that parking space.
Correct. And you have the option again, either one space per bedroom or one space per unit. That is up
Yeah, I think it's something that needs more discussion outside of this council. Any other discussion?
Just a quick point on that.
Yeah.
Under the state law that is currently governing ADUs right now that I have to implement, there is no parking requirement. So if there is no passage of this and an ADU comes up in front of me, I can't require any parking on the property. So there is a benefit to passing an ordinance that says one way or the other what the parking requirement is.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So the state law right now does not have a parking requirement for an
Right.
ADU.
Mhm.
It says a city may establish a parking requirement
Mhm.
with no more than one per bedroom. So again, if there's a delay in the passage of this, it just means that there could be some that could get passed through a building permit.
So you're saying we should amend it tonight and,
Correct. If you want parking in the ADU ordinance, you should amend it tonight.
okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend it, one parking space per bedroom.
I'll second that. I know that there's going to be some things that are going to happen that might bring more people to the zoning board. I understand that, but I think that parking is just at such a premium and that, we need to really consider it in the reality of it, the way it is now. Is there further discussion?
Can I point out one thing?
Yes.
We do have a lot of parking variances that come in front of us primarily right now for guest house conversions.
Mhm.
And the zoning board has been put in the awkward stance of saying there's a use that's allowed by right in the district that they are asking for it. The only thing preventing that is parking. And they're essentially having to make the discussion around, is there a hardship on the property? Almost every property in the city of Newport is non-conforming to the lot size. That is a hardship that has been found to be
Mhm.
convincing to the zoning board and to the state upon appeal.
Mhm.
And that's the only thing I would say is that I do believe that it will lead to a lot more parking variance requests, bogging down the zoning board. And in the end, there's a hardship argument that will likely pass through
Mhm.
and approve those potentially anyways.
Right.
So I think that as planning staff, obviously our proposal was 0. I think that we will implement exactly what we want, but I think that we would promote if there is some parking that is one space per unit as opposed to
Mhm.
one space per bedroom.
One space per unit, yeah. Now, is it possible for us, let's say, to pass this tonight in order to avoid, issues with the zoning board, but then to massage it a little bit more? I mean, can we?
That would be possible, but we would have to re-advertise this.
Mhm.
If this passes, it becomes the ordinance and we would have to, take that up with the city clerk and publicly advertised in the proper manner. It would go back in front of the planning board because it is a zoning code amendment.
Right, is there a discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Would you amend your amendment to one bedroom per unit? I'm sorry, one parking space per unit instead of one per bedroom?
Yeah.
I second that.
Okay, yes, Councilor Lima?
Is it possible to continue this?
Well,
Because here we go again. Like, I don't understand the ramifications of this. Like, there's obviously a reasoning why there is no parking space. And yes, like, while I'm thinking about, outliers like Dixon Street,
Mhm.
right? Like, I want to be sensitive to that. But I also recognize that our streets are very different, throughout Newport, and I'm kind of stuck on
Well, I mean,
I don't know whether or not.
I'm asking you, how many applications do you have right now that would have this issue?
I've already had about 3 applicants go through the building permit process and already have ADUs approved under state ordinance with no parking requirement.
Mhm.
Madam Chair, question with Councilor Lima. At the very beginning of the meeting, Councilor Romley proposed a continuance of not exactly this type of discussion, but something very similar. And you objected to that. Well, why should we support your amendment to continue when you didn't give Counselor Romley the courtesy, he had a lot of questions that were unanswered and that he needs to ask to be satisfied with a good product. What's the difference between his and what you're proposing?
I can answer that.
Well, I
this
asked
is a-
Counselor
this is a
Lima. I didn't
second
ask you.
reading. This is a second reading as opposed to the other one was a first.
I
reading.
did ask
Yeah.
Counselor Lima.
That's
Can she
fine.
not answer
That's
for
fine,
herself?
That's fine. In your words, Counselor Carlin, I refuse to answer that.
Okay.
So,
All right.
exactly. You have to.
So,
Madam Chair, can I comment?
yes, go ahead. Go
So I think we need to listen carefully to what Mr. Armour has shared with us. What I heard, and please correct me if I didn't hear this right, but what I heard is if we add the requirement for parking, that that now is a hard and fast requirement, and if people don't have it, that then creates a hardship for them to apply for a variance, and that the way the guidelines for granting variances are structured, the fact that we have created this as a requirement and the pre-existing lot does not have the parking, there is now a strong justification for the ZBR or the zoning board to give that variance.
Potentially,
Right.
yes.
So in effect, by adding the requirement for parking, we are simply creating an extra load of work for the the zoning board to award that parking. And under our current guidelines, in most cases, they would. And so we are not, in fact, accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish, which is denying ADUs that don't have parking. And by the way, I agree with that. I think it's a good thing. But if the way the mechanisms work is we're still going to have the same end result, but we are now clogging up the zoning board with a lot of parking variance requests, that's what I think I heard. And please clarify.
No, I agree with that. There will be situations where people can provide a parking space or don't have a real hardship because they have somewhere else in their property they could provide parking. But we do have a lot of districts and a lot of properties that do not have the space to add any more parking.
I mean, I'm in favor of a parking requirement as well. But I do think we need to carefully understand the ramifications because it sounds great, but if it has unintended consequences in the way the system works, I think we need to understand that.
I agree.
So should we just continue this for 2 weeks and then make the decision and kind of just if people go before the zoning board and ask for it, well, then they do, and but maybe we'll come out with a better resolution. I mean, how do we want to go about this?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Other than the parking, is there anything else problematic for operating with the state statute as opposed to something we enact tonight? I just want the council to be aware of that, to be on the part.
Right. So as explained at the last meeting, and I believe Councilor Romley brought this up, is that if we don't implement our own ordinance, the state law rules.
Right.
One of the detriments of the state law right now is there is no size limitation or bedroom limitation to an ADU under state law. And so someone could propose an infinite number of bedrooms on their property in an ADU, new construction in a 20,000 square foot property. So that is an unintended consequence.
Okay, so if we were to approve this tonight, I mean, nothing is written in stone. Would we be, because we need to avoid some bad consequences, right? So bad situations. Could you come before us with some ideas about the parking later on? Like in 2 weeks?
I can definitely come back. I don't believe that my opinion will change on it from a planning standpoint and administration standpoint, that requiring parking will both be a detriment to creating ADUs, but it also will just push it to the zoning board to approve.
But by approving this tonight, we are avoiding other potentially bad situations.
Correct. So I would just ask if that is the case, that you pass it tonight, just providing the direction of what you are looking for when I come back, because I believe we would come back as a new ordinance.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve this new chapter 17.79 entitled accessory dwelling units. It's on second reading. With a provision that the zoning officer returns to the council in 2 weeks with parking options.
Madam Chair, there's already a amendment with a second before us. Council Napolitano
Ah,
amended the proposal, so
Right, right.
let's do this the right way.
okay. So how,
Or
are
could
you
withdraw.
comfortable with my motion?
Not really.
Okay. So do you want to, we'll vote on your motion?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'd like to move forward on it.
Oh, you would like,
With the one room. I realize that you're going to be dealing with them coming back for a variance. We have to understand, there's, I believe, 13,000 cars registered in the city of Newport. And we probably have 600 parking spaces with meters, and then there's a free for all. There's nothing left. If you go down to the third ward, sometimes people can't even park in front of their houses. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to our residents. I think if we have the ability to actually provide a parking space, if they want to do an ADU, and that, and they're, you know, in the, they can do it. I think at minimum, we should ask for one parking space.
I completely agree with you, but there are some unintended consequences for us to not pass this tonight. And if Nick can come to us in 2 weeks to explore what you want to do, and we can amend we can amend the ordinance then. But there are unintended consequences that could possibly come before the zoning board beyond the parking issue. So, yeah.
I think Nick
So
wants to
if we
speak.
approve tonight without the amendment, and they come, Nick comes back in 2 weeks, we'll have to reopen this whole ordinance, won't we?
We would have to re-advertise, so.
Yeah, so you're talking 2 more hearings again.
I think one way or another, I think rather than Nick, it's important to pass on. With the amendment, and then depending on the direction of the council, we'd be starting another amendment process if we want to do it.
Okay. All right, so.
I was just gonna add that, if we were to move forward with this amendment with one parking space, there will be properties that can abide by that. And I believe that would be the case, that we would still get development of ADUs. I think there will just be others that are in certain districts that won't. Because those districts that can't provide the parking are likely gonna only be able to create an ADU through the conversion of an existing structure on their property. So those may have a built-in hardship based on how that works, but we would still have the ability to have ADUs that are sufficiently parked in places that can have new construction ADUs.
So if we approve Counselor Napolitano's amendment, we can still come back. Let's, and then that would be approving this, right, with the amendment. Then we can come back and massage it a little bit more.
Right, we could always, I mean, you could have us figure out over the next 6 months how many parking variances are being triggered from an ADU and decide whether that's a reason to remove the parking requirement. At that point, we can always amend this ordinance in either direction.
Madam Chair, is a parking variance always granted?
No, they're not. They look at every specific case individually under the circumstances of that case. It's just, we tend to see them on the small properties that dimensionally do not have room to add parking. They have justification and they meet the standards of part of it. But again, there are properties that will be able to abide by it, and we will obviously push them to comply where possible. And if they can't comply, they will have to apply for a zoning variance.
Sure, I know she wants to speak too. You wanted to speak also, right? Okay.
I just think if you're talking about a family who's adding an ADU for, say, a parent, an older parent, I think that qualifies as a hardship if for some reason they couldn't add a parking space, because my guess is there's a good chance the parent doesn't have a car at that point anyway, if they're getting an ADU. That being said, when it's a rental house and they're already providing rental bedrooms to 3, 4, 5 people and have that many cars, I think it's a very different situation. So I would just like to say, yeah, it could be a burden on the zoning board, but not having it is sure is a burden on your resident.
Yeah.
So either way, someone's being burdened here. It's an election year, guys. Where do you want the burden to fall?
Yeah.
So, sorry, Counselor Lima, I don't think you care about that.
Well, I can't believe you had the balls to say it.
Well, it's late.
That's right.
I lost myself.
What else can we say?
But anyway, I just think, those are two very different situations, and I think that the zoning board would legally, grant the person who's putting their older parent in an AD unit. But I think it needs to be looked at differently when it's a rental unit, because you're not requiring it to be owner occupied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more time, name and address.
Got it, Sadie. I do live in the 5th ward. I am acutely aware of the parking problems, and from my perspective, well, let me back up and say I don't want any burdens or obstacles or impediments for people getting an ADU on their property. I know that it's crucially needed in Newport. From my perspective, the parking problem is houses that have driveways, they don't park their cars in there. Houses that have multiple cars.
Yep.
I think parking is a huge issue in Newport, but I would ask that it not be included in the ordinance, this requirement, and then address parking globally, so that it's not just you're not imposing restrictions that just affect people who want to construct additional housing, which we need so badly.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to vote on Counselor Napolitano's amendment.
Could you clarify, is it at this time the one space per unit, not per bedroom?
Per unit, yes.
Per unit, okay.
Yes.
We have to, in seeking to do this right, we have to pull her original, Councilor Napolitano's original amendment, because it was one parking space per room. She had a second on that.
Right.
We
okay.
need to remove
So
that and then
do you
put
wi-
forward a new
Want to
resolution, or a new amendment.
withdraw your?
I'd like to
for-
withdraw my original amendment
And-
and change it to 1 parking space per unit.
Unit.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we're gonna vote. All in favor?
I
say-
abstain.
No, we cannot abstain.
Why not?
Are we voting on this? All right, come on, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What is the vote? Can we do a roll call, please?
Yes, I would love to do that.
Thank you.
Counselor Lima.
Damn. I'm sorry. I don't, aye.
Counselor Romley.
Aye.
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 Woo. All right, unanimous. Wow, okay. All right, okay, now a motion to approve as amended, correct?
Second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, all right. So motion to adjourn as council and convene as Board of License Commissioners.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve the consent calendar in its entirety.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve an application of Cape Doctem Restaurant LLC doing business as Fifth Element, 107 to 111 Broadway for a temporary expansion of their Class BV alcoholic beverage license to expand to 105 Broadway on October 12th, 2024, from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? This is just for the Broadway Street Fair, right? So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? No, okay. Motion to approve an application of Bullshot LLC doing business as Cabana 140, holder of a Class C alcoholic beverage license to transfer ownership to Cinnamon LLC, Lion Capital LLC, 66.7%, and Aaron Hawks LLC, 33.3% at the same premises. This is a hearing.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, is there anyone who would like to speak this hearing? Motion to close the public hearing and approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
Sorry, move to adjourn.
Second. Oh,
All those
I
in
wanted to
favor?
talk about
Aye.
that. Hold on.